Chapter 343. How annoying! Have you green-skinned orcs been kicked silly in the head by a donkey? Can't you use your brain a little and identify the target you're robbing? Zhang Cheng cursed as he clenched his teeth, pinching his nose to prevent the stench of blood and acid from entering his respiratory tract. The area within a dozen meters of him was littered with incomplete orc corpses. This was the 12th wave of orcs that he had encountered within 2 days of entering the northern part of the Red Ridge Mountains. At the same time, he had broken his record of killing more than 30 orcs in one go. It couldn't be helped. These idiots whose minds were filled with thoughts of war and plundering did not engage in any form of negotiation or communication. The first thing they did when they saw him was to draw their weapons, shout some unknown slogans, and charge forward to kill him. Helpless, Zhang Cheng could only resort to violence and kill every orc who dared to draw their weapons at him, taking the opportunity to extract their soul fragments. In just a few days, the soul pouch hanging at his waist was filled with over 100 roaring orc souls of various sizes. It was also thanks to these orcs that he became more proficient in using warlock spells. Now, even without using the power of a sorcerer or summoning demons, he could easily inject curses into the target's body. He could only watch as the orcs fell at his feet with a look of unwillingness and slowly took their last breaths. Of course, as the price of frequent battles, not only did he lose his horse, but his body was also inevitably tainted with some unbearable stench. For example, the stench of blood and the sour smell of orcs who did not bathe for a long time. But despite his complaints, Zhang Cheng was still rather satisfied with his gains, especially the soul fragments that filled the pouch. Not only could he use them to cast powerful destruction spells, but he could also use them to lure powerful demons. Just as he was happily planning how to use a part of his soul fragment to summon an apocalypse guard that could truly charge into battle, a black door wrapped in hard iron suddenly appeared not far in front of him. It had been smashed by an unknown force. Without a doubt, this was the legendary door that separated the Burning Plains from the Red Ridge Mountains. Ever since the Dark Iron Dwarves crazily summoned the Balrog, Ragnaros, the Burning Plains have been flooded with large amounts of magma from the depths of the Earth's core, as well as foreign life forms from the fire elemental world. In order to prevent these violent elemental life forms from threatening the safety of a lakeside town, the Stormwind Kingdom had created a special magic door to defend against possible invasions. But now, the arcane runes engraved on the door had long been completely destroyed by a powerful force, crooked on the side of the road. Less than 200 meters from the door, a nest of imps from time to time were happily bathing and playing in the magma, occasionally letting out ear-piercing screams. Sensing the rolling heat waves in the air, Zhang Cheng took a deep breath and sighed softly. The Burning Plains really lives up to its name. I can't believe how the Blackstone Beastmen, Black Iron Dwarves, and Flamebelly Ogres survived in such a vile environment. Just as he finished, he raised his head and drank a bottle of secondary invisibility potion. He completely ignored the imps in the magma and officially stepped into the range of Mount Doom. The sky. The ground scorched black by the hot magma. If there was a place in Azeroth that was closest to the legendary Inferno, it would definitely be the Burning Plains. Because of the terrifying summons of the Dark Iron Dwarves, Ragnaros broke the seal of the Titans in one fell swoop and returned to Azeroth from the fire elemental world. Therefore, the deepest part of the Blackrock volcano's magma was one of the classic team dungeons from the 60s, the Molten Core. Being in the Burning Plains, Zhang Cheng could clearly feel that the density of the fire elemental energy was increasing exponentially. There were even places where the fire elemental energy accounted for 70% of the magic energy. This also meant that in such an environment, casting frost magic was simply a fantasy. It was impossible to let all the mages in the team use frost arrows to attack the fire elemental life forms like in the game. He even doubted that in such an environment, who could kill the famous Balrog? Ragnaros? Not to mention killing him, it would be a miracle to reach the depths of the Molten Core alive. The temperature in the Burning Plains alone had reached an astonishing 55 degrees Celsius, and the closer one got to the Black Rock volcano, the higher the temperature. It was estimated that around the Black Rock spire, it would not be surprising if it reached 90 to 100 degrees Celsius. According to the conclusions of the scientists on Earth, the average adult could at most last an hour in an environment of 71 degrees Celsius, less than 50 minutes in an environment of 82 degrees Celsius, and once it exceeded 100 degrees Celsius, they would die within half an hour. This was under the premise of not doing any strenuous exercise. It was common knowledge that the more a person fought, the more heat their body needed to emit. Zhang Cheng could not imagine what kind of person in the so-called correct history could defeat Ragnaros in such a terrifying environment. Could it be that they were a group of people who did not need to breathe, rest, heartbeat, or even normal life forms, the forgotten ones? Walking slowly along the endless black, scorched earth, Zhang Cheng carefully avoided the large scorpions, the reddish-brown furred wolves, and the fire and lava elementals that occasionally appeared near the magma. In less than 4 hours, his entire body was soaked in sweat, and there was only 3 days' worth of drinking water left in his magic pouch. If he could not find a place to replenish his drinking water within 3 days, he could only start using large amounts of mana to artificially create fresh water. What was more terrifying was that in the burning plains where the terrain was destroyed, he could not determine his direction at all, whether it was the compass that was affected by the chaotic magnetic field, or the sky that was covered by gray smoke. The only thing that could barely serve as a marker was the towering volcano in front of him, the Black Rock volcano. Helplessly, he could only use the Orb of Deceit to transform himself into a Black Rock Orc Warlock and walk towards the Black Rock volcano. At least with this appearance, he would not be directly attacked by the orcs and black dragons along the way. As for the rest, he would take it one step at a time. Zhang Cheng believed that as long as he could stand in front of the Black Dragon King, Nefarian, he would definitely be able to gain his trust and even personally participate in the process of creating colorful dragons and draconic beasts. On the path of transcendence, there was no such thing as good or evil, only endless power and knowledge. Chapter 344. Following the path of the scarlet lava, Zhang Chengshun continued to move forward, one step at a time. The continuous high temperature had already made his brain a little fuzzy, and he could not remember how many days it had been since he entered the burning plains. Furthermore, even if he used frost spells to lower his body's temperature, it still could not relieve his physical and mental fatigue. As a resident of a modern city with well-developed public transportation, this was the first time he had experienced how difficult and painful it was to travel. Luckily, disguising himself as an orc warlock had saved him a lot of unnecessary trouble. Even though he would occasionally be attacked by fire and lava elementals, the Blackstone orcs stationed in the simple fortress, as well as the Black Dragon whelps and draconians wandering around the hilly area, would no longer take the initiative to attack. Occasionally, there would even be an orc who would take the initiative to greet him. However, he did not understand the orc language at all, and did not dare to have too much contact with them. He could only pretend to be cold and aloof as he nodded and left without saying a word. There was no doubt that this method prevented his identity from being exposed to a certain extent, and at the same time cut off the shortcut to the upper levels of the Blackstone Pagoda. Just as Zhang Cheng was starting to doubt whether he could reach the Blackstone Pagoda with his little remaining stamina, a large black shadow suddenly swept past his head, followed by a violent gale. Before his slow brain could react to what was happening, a young black dragon with a wingspan of over 6 meters descended from the sky, blocking the only path forward. Lowly human, Master wants to see you. Master? Zhang Qing instantly realized that his identity had been exposed, and a hint of nervousness flashed across his eyes. That's right. Don't try to resist or escape. I guarantee that you will be killed by me and my brothers and sisters before your laughable spells can take effect. After saying that, the young dragon opened its mouth and let out a loud roar. In the blink of an eye, another dozen or so black dragons between 5 and 7 meters long flew over from all directions. They kept circling in the air, and a few of them even spat out a dragon's breath that was a mixture of shadow and fire damage. Evidently, These young dragons were no longer pure black dragons. They were a special breed that had been modified by the son of the Black Dragon King, Nefarian. This dual attribute dragon breath had a resounding name, Shadow Flames. According to a rumor that came from an unknown place, only armor made from the scales of an adult black dragon could withstand the invasion of the Shadow Flames. Otherwise, if an ordinary person was exposed to the Shadow Flames, they would be devoured on the spot, and not even their bones would be left. Zhang Cheng didn't want to test the might of the Shadow Flames at all, so he wisely chose not to resist. Instead, he took the initiative to revert back to his original appearance. Then what are you waiting for? Lead the way. I can't wait to meet His Highness Nefarian and his ongoing experiments. Oof. Stand there and don't move. I'll take you to see my master. The black dragon shook its head in disdain and placed its right claw on Zhang Cheng's shoulder. Then, it loudly chanted an ancient draconic magic. Very quickly, the energy in the air became restless and finally gathered into an energy that could tear space apart. The man and dragon disappeared without a trace in less than 3 minutes. When the intense pressure and dizziness disappeared, Zhang Cheng slowly opened his eyes and found himself at the highest level of the Blackstone Tower. Through the stone railings not far away, he could even see the Blackstone volcano that was constantly spewing lava below. On the spacious platform, a man wearing black armor and a bright flame crown sat on the throne at the highest point. His eyes flickered with a frightening golden light. Without a doubt, he was none other than the eldest son of the Deathwing Nazario, the current leader of the Black Dragon Army, the elder brother of the Black Dragon Princess Onyxia, the famous Nefarian. Even though Zhang Cheng had already seen a real dragon in the Song of Ice and Fire, he still felt a trace of instinctive fear and trembling in the face of the dragon's aura that Nefarian emitted. Not to mention him, even the young black dragon that was teleported overcrawled on the ground and lowered its head to express its humility to its master. Interesting human. Can you tell me what drove you to come to the burning plains where danger lurks everywhere? What is it that allowed you to persevere in such a harsh environment? Honor? Wealth? Or power? After a long silence, Nefarian was the first to break the silence and asked with a slightly playful tone. As the owner of the Blackstone Tower, no matter whether it was the burning plains or the scorching canyon, every movement couldn't escape his eyes. In fact, from the moment Zhang Cheng passed through the door, he had been hiding in the dark and observing silently, trying to figure out the purpose of the other party's visit. One had to know that the Burning Plains wasn't a place where ordinary people would come. Be it the Alliance or the Horde, they could barely maintain an outpost that was used to spy on intelligence. Therefore, generally speaking, everyone who came to the Burning Plains would carry some important mission or mission. But after a period of observation, Nefarian discovered that Zhang Cheng didn't go to the Morgan outpost at all. Instead, he went straight to the Blackstone volcano. This unusual action undoubtedly aroused his interest, which led to today's scene. No, Your Highness, the driving force that supports me is neither honor, nor wealth, nor power. It is knowledge. If you don't mind, please give me a live subject, and I will show you some interesting research results. Then you will understand the purpose of my visit. Zhang Cheng bowed respectfully and made his request at the same time. He knew that if he couldn't prove his worth in the first place, then what awaited him next would be death or torture that was even more terrifying than death. Oh, Rend, bring a prisoner here. Nefarian ordered a glowing orb beside his seat. After a short while, a human with bloody wounds all over his body was escorted to the hall. Some of the wounds had already festered and were oozing pus. If it wasn't for the fact that Azeroth's human body was much stronger than Earth's, he would have died long ago. However, he wasn't much better now. Not only did he lose the strength to resist, but his eyes were also very unfocused. If he didn't receive treatment in time, he would die in 2 to 3 days. The indifferent Zhang Cheng didn't seem to care about the miserable state of the prisoner. In front of the Black Dragon Prince, he poured a small bottle of red, jelly-like mucus into the prisoner's mouth. In an instant. Chapter 345. After the man who had completely lost his mind killed the 2 orc warriors from the Blackrock clan, he glared with bloodshot eyes and pounced toward Nefarian's throne. He did not seem to be affected by the dragon's aura that was unintentionally emitted by the other party. He raised his sandbag-sized fist and smashed it down. Unfortunately, before he could even touch his target, the Black Dragon Prince raised his hand and waved it lightly as if he was chasing away a fly. In an instant, the mutated human seemed to have crashed into an invisible force field. His entire body was sent flying more than 10 meters away. He only stopped when he crashed into a thick stone pillar. Dazzling blood spurted out of his mouth, and he fell to the ground on the verge of death. The violent impact crushed his internal organs, and dark blood slowly flowed out of his mouth and nose. Just as the captive was struggling to get up and launch a second attack, the Black Dragon Prince suddenly disappeared from the throne. The next second, he instantly appeared in front of the other party and lifted the mutated man up with one hand. He carefully observed the worm-like blood vessels under the skin. After a while, he turned around and asked, "What did you give him to drink?" "Nothing much. A special substance that is rich in energy radiation extracted from the ring-shaped mountain water crystal." Zhang Cheng replied concisely. "Ring-shaped mountain water crystal? What's that?" Nefarian continued to ask with interest. As a madman who had personally created the colorful dragon clan, he could tell at a glance that this mutated human who was in great pain had actually evolved under the influence of some unknown force. Although the side effect of the evolution process was severe damage to the brain, if he could use this technology on the colorful dragons he had created, he would quickly obtain an invincible and terrifying army. Sensing the prying tone of the Black Dragon Prince, Zhang Cheng immediately lowered his voice and explained, "There are large amounts of multicolored special crystals buried around the Ungoro crater. According to my research, these crystals are constantly emitting different types of energy radiation. Under the influence of the radiation, the creatures there are more ancient than the outside world, and their bodies are also larger, especially the powerful magic Tyrannosaurus. It's simply a miracle of biological evolution." It was obvious that he had purposely hidden the fact that the Ungoro crater was actually a biological experiment site for the Titans. The reason was simple. Once they knew that the crystals in the crater were related to the Titans, they would have a clear direction, and Nefarian would lose his value. Chess pieces that had lost their value usually did not live for long. "That sounds interesting. Tell me, mortal, how far have you progressed in your research?" Nefarian stroked the beard on his chin, not hiding his greed. Zhang Cheng pretended to sigh helplessly. "My apologies. I'm afraid that I'll have to disappoint you. Because I don't have enough test subjects, I can't adjust the dosage bit by bit. So many times, I can't even guarantee the survival of the test subjects." "I understand. You're the Dragon Prince. Nefarian, 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 Nefarian thought Nefarian, Nefarian. But today, a human that was insignificant in his eyes was actually standing in front of him and speaking so confidently without any fear or reverence. For a moment, the atmosphere in the hall suddenly became oppressive. All the servants who had some understanding of their master's personality realized that this temperamental black dragon prince was angry. They all prostrated themselves on the ground, afraid that they would accidentally become the target of his venting. On the contrary, it was Zhang Cheng who unhurriedly bowed and softly complimented. "Yes, Your Highness. In my mind, apart from you, there is no other person in Azeroth who has the qualifications to conduct this research. Only you could decipher the mysteries behind it. I am willing to do everything in my power to help you complete it and create the miracle of life." You want to be my servant?" Nefarian raised his eyebrows in surprise. He did not expect that the young human in front of him would be willing to hand over his research results so easily. "No, not a servant. I wish to be your collaborator. I do not ask for wealth, power, or authority. I only wish to unravel some of the secrets hidden behind the world." Zhang Cheng corrected him with a serious expression. He would not become anyone's servant, even if it was only in name. Furthermore, the black dragons were cruel and cunning. They did not treat their subordinates as anything. Becoming their servant was no different from committing suicide. Ha ha, collaborator? What makes you think that you have the qualifications to work with me? Do you know who I am? Nefarian laughed maniacally as he questioned loudly. Of course, you are the eldest son of Deathwing, the successor of the Black Dragon Army, the Great Nefarian. I also know that you are conducting research on the rainbow dragons, trying to create a new species that combines the abilities of the 5 dragon aspects. Think about it. If you were to add in this evolutionary radiation, how powerful would it be? Whether it is the Alliance or the Horde, they would all submit to your army. You would become the true king of the world. Under the influence of Zhang Cheng's passionate voice, the Black Dragon Prince revealed an expression of extreme enjoyment. It was as if he could already see his army sweeping through Azeroth and finally establishing a huge empire. The arrogance in the dragon's subconscious made him forget how a mere mortal knew of his identity. And how did he know about the secret research on the rainbow dragons? After a full 2 to 3 minutes, he finally snapped out of his fantasy and nodded with satisfaction. You have a way with words, mortal. All right, I will benevolently allow you to become an ally of the Black Dragon Army. But remember, if one day I find out that your research is of no use to the army, you can execute me at any time. Zhang Cheng took the initiative to add the second half of the sentence. This was because the crystals produced by the crater were the advanced biological technology left behind by the Titans. He believed that if these crystals could create an incredible creature like the magic Tyrannosaurus, they would naturally be useful to the dragons. As for whether the Black Dragon Prince could use these crystals that emitted radiation to create rainbow dragons that were even more powerful than the ones in the storyline, that was none of his business. After all, once he got what he wanted, he would immediately leave Azeroth and prepare for the upcoming trial. It did not matter, even if he attracted the attention of the Bronze Dragon. Very good. From now on, you'll be my chief consultant. You will be responsible for hatching the rainbow dragons. At most 1 month, I want to see your results. Otherwise, you know the consequences. Chapter 346. In the upper levels of the Blackstone Tower, Zhang Chengzheng, dressed in a dark blue robe, was carefully injecting the colorful, jelly-like liquid into the unhatched dragon eggs with the help of 2 dragonborn. He then carefully observed the changes in each of the eggs. Ever since he had reached an agreement with Nefarian, the son of the Black Dragon King, he had been temporarily sent here to conduct live experiments to ensure the correct ratio and increase the strength of the colorful dragon army. As the manager of the incubation, the Dragonborn Sorka Flaming Crown was in charge of coordinating the relevant matters and fulfilling his various requests. As for the crystals in the crater, they were naturally handled by the goblins. It was important to note that these green-skinned dwarves, who valued wealth as much as their lives, had long since formed an alliance with the Black Dragon Army. Just look at the goblin technicians in Blackwing's nest. As long as they were paid enough, they could even get Tyron's bananas and Jaina's undergarments, not to mention a bunch of useless crystals that only looked a little better. With the help of long-distance magical teleportation, boxes of crystals from Ongoro Crater were continuously sent into the Blackstone Tower in less than 3 days. Out of curiosity about these crystals that emitted abnormal radiation, Nefarian had even personally obtained some and hid on the platform on the top floor to study them. He had not shown himself for an entire month. He seemed to have forgotten about the deadline he had set, as well as the fact that he had forgotten to check if these things were effective on dragon-type creatures. However, even if the Black Dragon Prince had forgotten, it did not mean that Zhang Cheng would slack off. On the contrary, in order to achieve his goal as quickly as possible, he was almost doing his best. He slept at most 4 hours a day and used the rest of his time to adjust the ratio of the different crystals in the potion. The strange corpses of young dragons piled up in the corners spoke of how many poor dragon eggs had been murdered. It was close to 200 to 300 in a month. Soraka, Flaming Crown, glared at the human working in front of the alchemy platform with its beast-like eyes. It only spoke after a few minutes. You have not rested for a full 20 hours since yesterday, and it has been like this for an entire week. If this continues, you will die. Shut up. What I do is none of your business. Zhang Cheng roared without turning his head. Due to the lack of rest for a long time, not only was his complexion extremely pale, even his temper had become irritable and irritable. Two Dragonborn had once been tortured to the brink of collapse by his curses simply because they disobeyed his orders, almost losing their lives. Perhaps to a certain extent, this was his true nature that he had unintentionally revealed. He was a cruel, tyrannical, and impatient soul. No. I think you misunderstood something. I'm not concerned about your health. I just want to tell you that instead of continuing to waste time here, you should hurry up and enjoy a good life. Otherwise, when Master comes back to his senses, you won't be able to live. If I were you, I would ask Chief Reed to send over a few beautiful female captives we captured 2 days ago and have some fun with them in the name of research. Soraka Fiery Crown teased with an evil tone. As an incubator, his original duty was to hatch an endless stream of dragon eggs for his master. But ever since this human came, almost all the hatchlings had died due to accidents. That was why he couldn't wait for the human to die immediately, or else he would be forgotten by his master sooner or later. Do you want to die? Zhang Cheng turned around abruptly, his right eye revealing a blatant murderous intent. If one were to remove the blindfold covering his left eye, one would discover that the seal on his left eye was showing signs of loosening. The terrifying soul of Arita was constantly corroding his body and brain with darkness and evil energy. But it was a pity that Soraka Flame Crown wasn't aware of that. He continued to mock. Kill me? With just you? Mortal, you're too arrogant. Perhaps I should teach you a lesson on behalf of Master. He. Ha 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 ha. As he laughed maniacally, the left side of Zhang Cheng's face quickly turned black like a demon's skin. There was no hesitation. He didn't even care about the dragon spawn incubators around him. He raised his hand and shot out a series of black AoE shadow arrows, severely injuring all the hostile dragon spawn incubators. Then, he cast AoE Corrosion and Curse of Agony. In the blink of an eye, more than 20 unlucky ones in the hall fell to the ground, groaning in pain. After all, although the dragon spawn had high HP and magic resistance, they were still made of flesh and blood. They couldn't resist the terrifying power of space-time distortion. In less than a minute, the black scales all fell off, revealing a large area of festering inner skin. If they hadn't lost their ability to move, they would have committed suicide without hesitation to end this painful torture. It could be said that there was no torture in Azeroth that could compare to a warlock's curse. Bastard, what are you trying to do? Do you want to become enemies with the Black Dragon army? Soraka Fiery Crown roared angrily when he saw the miserable state his subordinates were in. No, idiot. I just feel that the reason why the experiment hasn't made any breakthroughs is because we lack a living body with a stronger HP. Now, I hope that you can make a sacrifice for His Highness Nefarian and try the evolution liquid that I've concocted according to the latest ratio. Zhang Cheng laughed coldly as he took the bottle of unknown liquid that was so black that it didn't reflect any light at all from the alchemy table. Based on the experience he had accumulated through repeated failures, the liquid in the bottle wasn't just limited to the energy radiation extracted from the crystals. It also contained the blood of red dragons, green dragons, bronze dragons, and blue dragons. There was even a piece of Nefarian scale powder. Soraka Fiery Crown finally realized that the human standing in front of him had gone mad. To be more precise, he had fallen into a state of extreme insanity. Without another word, he waved his sharp claws and charged forward. As an incubator, fighting wasn't his forte. However, the black dragon blood flowing in his body gave him strength, speed, and defense that ordinary people couldn't hope to reach. However, before he could reach Soraka Fiery Crown, he suddenly felt an intense pain in his abdomen. Following that, a huge wound appeared out of nowhere. Blood and internal organs spurted out like crazy, as if something had shredded his organs into minced meat. Oh, you didn't die after being hit by my doomsday curse? You're really tough. Zhang Cheng's lips curled up, and his face was filled with a crazed expression. He didn't give Soraka Fiery Crown a chance to retaliate. In a flash, he appeared in front of Soraka Fiery Crown and slowly poured a bottle of liquid into his mouth. The next second, Chapter 347. Ah! I'll kill you. I'll kill you. Despicable humans. Soraka Fiery Crown, who was enduring unimaginable pain, began to wail. He had never wanted someone to grant him a merciful death as much as he did now. Every inch of his muscles and every cell in his body was undergoing drastic changes that were surging into his brain through his nerves. The feeling was almost driving him insane. Relax, my friend. Haven't you noticed that your body is undergoing some sort of metamorphosis? Trust me, when it's complete, you won't hate me. Instead, you'll thank me. Zhang Cheng stared at Soraka's elongated body, as well as the bloody skeleton that was rapidly covering his back. It was clear that his new formula was a success. As long as Soraka Fiery Crown could persevere until the end, he would definitely be able to get rid of his awkward status as a draconid and become a true giant. He might even become a new life form that had fused with the abilities of the Penishade guardian dragons. According to the experience of many failures, as long as the experimental subjects did not die or explode immediately after drinking the potion, it meant that the crystal radiation in the potion did not exceed the limits of their tolerance. What would determine the success of the potion was no longer the potion itself, but the willpower and physical strength of the user. In any case, to condense thousands of years of evolution into a few minutes to half an hour, there was a certain amount of risk involved. Soraka Fiery Crown's frenzied howls alerted the Blackrock orcs upstairs. Even the self-proclaimed Great Chieftain Ren Blackhand couldn't help but run over to see what was happening. However, when he saw the dying Draconid incubator on the ground, as well as Soraka Fiery Crown's rapidly growing bones and flesh, he was completely stunned. Coupled with Zhang Cheng's somewhat familiar demonic face, he did not even think about it before turning around and running back to the arena's stands. He activated the Orb of Command and reported the situation in the incubation room to his master. After a mere 5 minutes, Nefarian put down his research and teleported to the incubation chamber that reeked of blood. Soraka Fiery Crown's spirit finally broke down just as he was trying to figure out what was going on. He attacked his master like a madman. "Bastard, what are you doing?" The Black Dragon Prince swung his beloved Rakamir Illimancy hammer and smashed it at the attacker's head, trying to use the pain to awaken the fear in the other party's subconscious mind. Unfortunately, he had underestimated the strength of his strengthened subordinates. The moment the hammer collided with the sharp claws, Rakamir Illimancy's hammer was sent flying by the overwhelming force. Nefarian also couldn't help but take a few steps back, his eyes filled with undisguised shock. After all, he was the eldest son of Deathwing, one of the most powerful black dragons aside from his father. Even if he maintained his human form, his strength was not something a mere elite dragonoid could contend against. But now, the fact that Soraka Flaming Crown was able to match or even surpass him in physical strength was enough to prove the value of the ring-shaped mountain water crystal. Interesting. How interesting. Human, I admit that you've given me a big surprise. With that, Nefarian's body began to expand rapidly. In the blink of an eye, he turned from a human into a giant creature that was more than 50 meters long. He wasn't in a hurry to kill Soraka Flaming Crown, who had lost his mind. Instead, he raised his front claws and pressed him to the ground, at the same time summoning helpers to bind him tightly with magic. With the help of more than 30 orc warlocks and dragonoid spellcasters, this unlucky bastard was quickly turned into a target that could only scream in agony and couldn't move at all. About half an hour later, he finally completed his evolution after going through the rubber band. Panting, he fell into a semi-comatose state. Light purple scales, rich magical aura, almost perfect magic resistance, unbelievable muscle strength, and huge wings that were comparable to a dragon's, apart from his upper body that was still in dragonoid form. The other parts of Soraka Flaming Crown's body were no different from an adult dragon's. This was especially true for his strong wings and thick tail, which meant that he could fly and swing his tail like a real dragon. Looking at the monster that he had personally created, Zhang Cheng said with a slightly excited tone, "How is it, Your Highness? Are you satisfied with the results of my research?" Nefarian nodded thoughtfully. "Yes, I'm satisfied. Of course. Even though you've caused me to lose an important subordinate, you've brought about endless possibilities. Tell me, what else do you need next?" Next? Of course, the next step is to further optimize it until we can remove all the side effects. By then, we can use it to offset our own racial flaws and evolve toward a higher level of life. Zhang Cheng's eyes flashed with a crazy light as he said this. Perhaps it was because of the corrosion of the demon's soul, or some attribute in his subconscious that had erupted, but terrifying ideas kept popping up in his mind. You're planning to use it yourself? Nefarian was shocked. As a similarly crazy biological researcher, he might have done all sorts of terrifying experiments on his subordinates or other dragons, but he had never thought that he would one day be used as a test subject. Why not? Don't you think that the last step in exploring the secrets of life evolution is to evolve yourself? Think about it. Once you've fused with the red dragon's flame of life, the bronze dragon's time, the blue dragon's magic, the green dragon's force of nature, and the black dragon's innately close connection with the earth, who in this world would be your match? Unknowingly, Zhang Cheng's voice carried a trace of bewitching power. Every time he said a word, the Black Dragon Prince felt his heart beat faster. He even ignored the demonic half of his face that was becoming more and more serious. There were more than 30 to 40 Blackrock warlocks under his command, and a few of the stronger ones could completely transform themselves into demons. That was why he didn't think it was a big deal. Just as Nefarian subconsciously wanted to say something, Zhang Cheng suddenly covered his eyes and let out a scream, fainting completely. At the same time, the demonic skin that appeared on his body and the protruding horns on his forehead all disappeared, as if everything that had just happened was an illusion. Damn it! What's going on? The Black Dragon Prince immediately frowned. Chapter 348. Darkness, boundless darkness. There was no light, no air, no water, and no earth. Zhang Cheng felt as if he was in the deepest part of a vast universe, or at the end of a distorted space and time. As there was nothing he could use as a reference, he could not determine the time, let alone whether he was alive or dead. In this extremely special environment, his thoughts began to be infinitely magnified. Before he could try to figure out what was going on, suddenly a mysterious and beautiful planet appeared in his field of vision out of thin air. In particular, the rich magic energy shrouded in the atmosphere was not inferior to that of Azeroth, or even better. Just as Zhang Cheng's mind was filled with doubts, he was pushed down from the sky by a powerful force without warning. Following an indescribable high-speed fall, his vision turned black, as if he had crashed into a place covered in an unknown liquid. For a moment, a series of feelings of warmth, comfort, and safety welled up in his heart. However, this feeling did not last for more than a few minutes, as another powerful force pushed him out. The next second, the bright light in front of him and the strangely shaped buildings immediately attracted all his attention, especially a few humanoid creatures with strange green skin and goat-like lower bodies. They even laughed happily. Among them, the tallest man held him up and shouted loudly, "Marasa!" Instantly, Zhang Cheng understood where he was looking at everything. Argus, a mysterious planet where the Titan Star Soul was sleeping. And these strange-looking humanoid creatures were the people of Arita who had not been seduced by the Dark Titan Sargeras. Obviously, for some unknown reason, he had entered the sealed demon's soul in his body, Marasa's memory, and experienced everything that Marasa had experienced from a first-person perspective. Although Zhang Cheng did not know why such an incredible thing had happened, it did not stop him from concentrating and remembering everything that was about to happen. In particular, the magic system of Arita was far more developed than that of the Magic Kingdom, Dalaran, and the forbidden dark knowledge that the Dark Titan had transmitted to them. It had to be said that as a mortal who had yet to figure out his current situation, his thirst for power and knowledge had already surpassed life and death soon. Erida's baby, Melassa, grew up rapidly in an extremely surreal fast-forward. He began to learn complex and profound magical knowledge from easy to difficult. In less than 60 years, he had become one of the most famous spellcasters in Argus, even receiving praise from the Archerons, Kill, Jaden, and Velen. His parents and family were proud of him, and his friends saw him as an example of hard work. Everything looked so beautiful. Unfortunately, the wonderful life lasted for about 10 years before an unexpected accident disrupted all his plans and expectations for the future. The Dark Titan Sargeras, who was once the most powerful warrior of the Pantheon and had just formed the Burning Legion, discovered this planet and the intelligent people of Irida who lived on this planet. After a period of observation, Sargeras found that the people of Irida were the most intelligent and magically malleable people he had ever seen in the vast universe. At the same time, they were the perfect choice to assist him in managing and commanding the chaotic Burning Legion. As a powerful warrior who had participated in countless battles that could be called apocalyptic, he did not like to beat around the bush. He directly conveyed his wishes to the Archerons of Irida through an illusion. At the same time, promised endless knowledge and even more powerful magic energy, dark energy. After witnessing the almost invincible power of the Dark Titan, Archerons and Kill Jaden quickly made the decision to lead all the people of Irida to submit to the Dark Titan. Perhaps in their eyes, such a choice that could give them knowledge and power while avoiding the destruction of their race did not need to be considered too much. However, Velen, who had the title of Prophet, took advantage of the time when the other two Archerons were discussing the specific details of the surrender. With the help of a holy life called Naru, he brought some of his people and fled Argus, including Marassa's beloved wife. Filled with the pain of being betrayed by his lover and his hatred for Velen and Naru, Marassa quickly embraced the powerful dark energy under the leadership of Kill Jaden and Archerons, as well as the shadow energy from the distortion of time and space. With the knowledge imparted to him by the Dark Titan, he quickly grew into a powerful spellcaster and senior commander of the Burning Legion. Under his leadership, the Legion conquered and destroyed world after world. After thousands of years of pursuit, they finally found the hiding place of the traitors, the home of the orcs, Draenor. In the end, Kill Jaden easily made use of the orcs' natural worship of power and established the famous Shadow Council. They began to unite and attack the outsiders who called themselves Draenei. In that battle, thousands of Draenei fugitives died, and many more were captured by the orc warlocks and became raw materials for the construction of the Dark Portal. Melassa's former wife and love had died at the hands of Okari. However, the cruel and cunning orc warlock did not kill her directly. Instead, he used an evil dark spell to extract her soul and imprisoned it in his own skull to create a powerful magic item. It was also because of this that when he was forced to summon the demon Erida responded without hesitation. Its purpose was to retrieve the skull that imprisoned his wife's soul. But what Marassa did not expect was that he was defeated on the battlefield, and the despicable Okari even attacked him when he was seriously injured, directly injuring and imprisoning the demon's powerful soul. With a strong sense of unwillingness and anger, all the illusions in front of him quickly turned into nothingness, leaving only the remaining emotions in his mind. Unbelievable. Arcane spells can be used like this? So the essence of shadow and dark energy is actually, with a suppressed low voice, Zhang Cheng suddenly opened his eyes. His demonic body quickly returned to normal, and in its place were runes that flashed with mysterious violet light. Unlike the arcane runes that the Dalaran mages kept on their bodies, these runes were more complex and more precise. In the blink of an eye, thousands of runes seemed to come alive, resonating with the magical energy in the air. Asterisk boom. Star. Chapter 349. Damn it. What's going on? Nefarian, the owner of the Blackstone Pagoda, was naturally aware of the loud noise and energy resonance. In less than 3 to 5 seconds, he appeared in the messy room, his eyes flashing with anger as he looked around. Soon, he saw Zhang Cheng floating in the air outside the broken wall. At the same time, Zhang Cheng, who had just finished optimizing his magic circuit, calmed down the energy storm that he accidentally caused. He bowed elegantly and greeted, "Good evening, Your Highness. I'm sorry for disturbing your rest." "Oh, you're back to normal." Nefarian glanced at the scattered flesh and blood of the orc warlock with a curious expression on his face. He couldn't help but be curious. 40 hours ago, a warlock leader named Jed had told him that this human soul had been corroded by a demon, and it wouldn't be long before he turned into a living demon. No one could stop the fire from reversing the process. He was a little sad because he didn't find the most important part of the experiment notes, the ratio between the crystal's energy and the dragon's blood. But in the blink of an eye, this young human who was sentenced to death had miraculously survived. Judging from the arcane runes that appeared on his skin, his strength had increased tremendously. Although there was still a considerable gap between him and Nefarian, he was no longer a lowly ant, but someone who was truly qualified to talk to him. Strength had always been the most important standard in Azeroth to measure the relationship between people and between intelligent races. It was just like how people on Earth used wealth, power, and talent to divide themselves into different classes. When the boar god Agamagam was still alive, the boar people's lives were so good. But what happened after he died in the hands of the demons in the ancient war to resist the invasion of the Burning Legion? The boar people's lives immediately fell from heaven to hell. Not only was their living space constantly reduced, but recently, after the establishment of their tribe, all kinds of bounties were placed on them. It was just like how America used bounties on the scalps of Native Americans to reduce the number of natives in North America. No one would be merciful to the boar people just because of the sacrifice of the boar god Agamagam. This was the price to pay for losing a powerful shelter. He wondered if Agamagam would regret his sacrifice if he knew that his people were being treated like this. As for the idea that everyone was born equal, it could only be used as a slogan at most. Anyone with a brain would not take it seriously. Feeling the abundant arcane energy in his body, as well as the explosive growth of dark energy and shadow energy, Zhang Qing quickly realized that he was no longer a nobody who needed to hide. Even a powerful spellcaster like Master Anselm Ruinvawal was not necessarily his opponent now. The reason was very simple. In that dreamlike experience, he'd practically absorbed all the knowledge that Marasa had learned in his lifetime, as well as his extremely rich combat experience. Right now, his brain was like a computer loaded with a brand new operating system and a huge database. With just a thought, he could find the best solution. Although he did not understand what kind of power allowed him to delightfully pry into the deepest memories of the demon's soul, this did not stop him from using what he obtained to become even more powerful. He believed that sooner or later, the owner of the parchment would be able to unravel all the mysteries behind it. Understanding this, Zhang Cheng took a deep breath and replied with a smile, "Yes, I'm back to normal. If you don't mind, can I borrow the empty space in the lower level of the Blackrock Tower to do a few small magic experiments?" "Of course. No problem. My dear chief technician and ally, from now on, you are the second owner of the Blackrock Tower other than me. As long as you are willing, you can go wherever you want and do whatever you want. But in return, I need your research results to strengthen the colorful Dragonborn army." Nefarian could not wait to make his request. Although he was a dragon, he was sometimes extremely arrogant and conceited and would not allow anyone to provoke or refute him. But at the same time, he was also a fanatical researcher. He did not mind giving due respect to mortals who were more professional than him. And the young human floating in the air was no doubt such an existence. A human who was crazier, more persistent, and more daring than him. Every time he recalled the maniac smile before he fainted, and how he threatened to modify himself and evolve into a higher life form, the Black Dragon Prince could not help but think of his father and mother. "Thank you for your generosity. 3 weeks. Please give me 3 more weeks. I will create a truly perfect, colorful Dragonborn that retains its rationality." Please believe me when I say that both the dark iron dwarves and the flame demon king, Ragnaros hiding in the molten core, will tremble in front of it. With that, Zhang Cheng pursed his lips, revealing an expression that was unclear whether it was excitement or fanaticism. He could not wait to combine his newly acquired knowledge with the evolving potion and try to create a new life form. Ha ha! Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and start. I can't wait to see the results of your research. If it's really as powerful as you say, then I'll give you a gift in return. A gift that will definitely satisfy you. Nefarian burst into laughter. Just a few days ago, he had used countless dragon corpses to create a gigantic dragonborn, Chromagus. However, due to the maximal enhancement of their abilities, the two giant beasts that looked like dogs didn't have enough intelligence. Although they had obtained a portion of the 5 attributes of the giant dragons, they could only rely on their innate instincts to fight. If it was in the past, perhaps he would have thought that Chromagus was a great work of art. If there were enough materials, he would have created a few more to form an army. But now, after seeing the miraculous power of the ring-shaped mountain water crystal, the Black Dragon Prince was no longer satisfied with creating a beast without intelligence. He wanted an intelligent life form, a general that could understand and carry out complex orders. Just like the word that had been repeatedly mentioned before. Evolution. Then I'll look forward to it. Zhang Cheng undoubtedly saw the wild ambition in Nefarian's eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up into a playful smile. At the same time, he constructed a sinister plan in his mind. After all, he was here to obtain knowledge and power, not to strengthen the Black Dragon Prince. Chapter 350. In the lower level of the Black Rock Tower, there were a large number of evil creatures that submitted to the Black Dragon Prince's power. There were trolls from the Burnthorn tribe, ogres from the Spike tribe, and orcs from the Blood Axe and Fire Seal tribes. The orcs from the Blood Axe tribe even made use of the 2 huge Mount Wolves, Gizrel and Howlyken, to produce a continuous stream of Mount Wolf pups. Then, they used the dark magic of the warlocks to speed up their maturation in an attempt to create an army of Mount Wolves. As Nefarian's trusted aide, the elite Dragonborn General Drakisath was the commander of this mixed army. At the same time, he also had the mission of testing the strength of the colorful Dragonborn and the colorful hatchlings. However, today, he did not inspect his subordinates, who were always in conflict with each other, nor did he observe the colorful hatchlings with light purple scales. Instead, he stared at the huge egg not far away. To be exact, that thing could no longer be called an egg. It should be more appropriate to call it a sarcoma. Not only did it not have any scales, but it was also constantly squirming, as if something was about to break out of the shell. Although he had seen many terrifying experiments done by his master, none of them gave him such a strong sense of suffocation. It was as if the monster inside would immediately kill him once it hatched. Drakisath did not understand why the Black Dragon Prince would allow a human to carry out such a dangerous experiment in his own territory. Just last week, due to the aftermath of a demon summoning ritual, 6 of the Fire Seal clan's precious spellcasters had died, and at least 4 Spike Ogres had almost been burned alive by the evil energy flames that spewed out. And the culprit behind all of this was the young human standing in front of the sarcoma, his eyes flashing with madness. If not for Nefarian's order that no one was allowed to interfere with what he was doing, Drakisath would have torn his throat apart and fed his corpse to the Mount Wolves. But unfortunately, in the Black Rock Tower, no one could go against the Black Dragon Prince's orders. Even if they did, they could suffer a punishment worse than death. Therefore, although his heart was filled with all kinds of dissatisfaction, there was nothing he could do. He could only watch helplessly. At the same time, Zhang Cheng, who was standing in front of the huge flesh egg, muttered to himself in a voice that only he could hear, "The body of the guardian dragon, the blood of the demon, and the energy from the ring-shaped mountain water crystal. Now, even I am curious about what it will look like when it hatches." As soon as his voice fell, the doomed sentinel beside him, who was wearing magic armor and holding a double-edged great sword, suddenly reminded him, "Master, I suggest that you retreat a little. At the current speed, it won't be long before there's an eruption of energy inside. Oh, tell me, what do you feel, Polak? Zhang Cheng asked without turning his head. This powerful demon was more than 5 meters tall and had been summoned through a ritual last week. Unlike the cannon fodders of the Burning Legion, it was a mid-level commander. Not only did it possess excellent melee combat skills, but it was also proficient in strategy and tactics. At the same time, it also possessed several spell-like abilities such as Shadow Arrow, Demonic Fire Rain, and Soul Devouring. It could be said that no one in the entire lower level of the Blackrock Spire was a match for it. Sentinel, 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 Sentinel of Sentinel. I see a soul full of anger and brutality. I suggest that we leave quickly. Otherwise, Before Sentinel Sentinel could finish speaking, Zhang Cheng suddenly put his index finger on his lips and made a silent gesture. When the former saw this, he immediately shut his mouth and put on a taciturn appearance. The next second, there was a violent energy vibration in the air. Nefarian, the son of the Black Dragon King, appeared out of thin air in the middle of the hall. He ignored everyone and carefully observed the changes in the flesh egg. He listened to the heartbeat that was getting stronger and stronger. A satisfied expression appeared on his face. Great! This little guy is getting stronger and stronger. When it is born, it will definitely surpass Chromagus and become the most perfect creation. My dear friend, you have really brought me a big surprise. Hee, you are too kind. Here, these are all my recent experiment notes, as well as the potion formulas that have been optimized many times. As long as you follow the steps above, you will be able to create an endless army of dragons that can sweep through the entire Azeroth. I sincerely hope that you will be able to defeat your enemies and ascend to the supreme throne. After saying this, Zhang Cheng handed over the secretly altered notes. If the Black Dragon Prince really followed the steps above to create colorful dragons, then the result would not be an invincible army, but a group of crazy monsters that were full of hunger and thirst to kill and destroy everything. Perhaps the adventurers would not even need to end his life. The dragons that could not be satisfied would be the first to turn the Blackrock Tower upside down. You actually took the initiative to hand over the experiment notes? Nefarian was obviously shocked. He quickly opened it, and after confirming the contents, he could not help but frown. The reason was very simple. As an expert who liked to do biological research, he could clearly see that the notes were real, but he did not understand why the other party would do this. According to his thinking, this somewhat crazy young man in front of him should have kept the notes to whet his appetite, and then found a suitable time to exchange them for benefits. Zhang Cheng undoubtedly sensed the Black Dragon Prince's doubts, and expressionlessly explained, "Your Highness, I have already completed the experiment and obtained the knowledge I wanted, so there is no reason for me to stay any longer." I see, you want to leave. Nefarian had a look of realization. That's right. Next, I will be going to the Mallet of Misfortune in Feralas to visit the High Elf mages who lived in seclusion in the ancient city of Erethras 12,000 years ago and discuss the mysteries of magic with them. Zhang Cheng revealed his next destination half-truthfully. After hearing this, Nefarian's eyes flashed with a strange light, as if he was thinking about something. After about a minute or two, he smiled and nodded. "All right, I accept your farewell, and at the same time, I look forward to your next visit. Here, this is the reward I promised you. Also, if you return to Stormwind City, you might as well visit my sister. Her human name is Katrona Priest. Thank you for your generosity and kindness. If you don't mind, I will be leaving now. After all, I still need to absorb more knowledge to perfect myself and evolve to a higher level of life." Zhang Cheng deliberately pretended to be crazy as he bowed, turned around, and disappeared into the complicated passageways of the lower level of the Blackrock Tower with the Doom Sentinel. As soon as he left, Dracasath came up to him and asked in a low voice, "Master, why did you let him go?" Chapter 351. Walking out of the Blackrock Tower filled with boiling lava and suffocating heat waves, Zhang Cheng once again saw the sky that he had not seen for a long time. The color of the sky was slightly abnormal, as if it had been dyed with blood. It was an eerie red, and ominous black smoke drifted past from time to time. But all this was nothing to him, who had traversed the burning steppes. Along with a few strange incantations, 6 runes made of pure, arcane energy quickly formed an invisible barrier around his body, forcibly isolating him from the high temperature and dirty air. Obviously, this was one of the knowledge he had learned in the dream, and, at the same time, it was also evidence of the glorious magical civilization that the people of Arita had created before they fell. But regrettably, after these people embraced shadow and dark energy, they abandoned the seemingly weak arcane power. But Zhang Cheng was different. Unlike many of his predecessors, he did not abandon his profession as a sorcerer just because he had obtained more powerful sorcerer powers. Instead, he felt that arcane power was not as weak as it seemed. On the contrary, arcane magic, which was extremely malleable, should have an upper limit far beyond dark energy and shadow. It was just that no one had been able to fully tap into its potential yet. Full of anticipation for the next new world, he casually opened the wooden box that Nefarian had given him before he left. Instantly, a piece of silver liquid wrapped in a black, translucent crystal appeared on a velvet cushion in the middle of the box. Driven by strong curiosity, Zhang Cheng subconsciously touched the surface of the crystal. An indescribable surge of energy quickly rushed into his body. Sorrow, pain, regret, madness. For a moment, all kinds of strong emotions began to appear in his mind. His connection with arcane, dark energy, shadow, elemental, and many other energies suddenly became closer, and even his thoughts became more focused. It was as if the powerful spells that required a long time of chanting now only required a thought to cast. Without a doubt, the silver liquid inside the crystal was no ordinary thing, but a special substance that was very close to the origin of magic. But he did not understand why a mysterious liquid would carry the emotions of an intelligent being. This feeling was so strong that it almost made him, who was incomparably cold, shed tears. Just as he was racking his brains to figure out what the Black Dragon Prince had given him, an idea suddenly flashed through his mind. He subconsciously blurted out a few words. Tears of Nesario. That's right. It was the tear of Nesario. It was rumored that the Black Dragon King, Nesario, shed tears of pain and remorse at the last moment before he was lured into depravity by the ancient gods. It was not surprising that it contained such great power. Even if an ordinary person who knew nothing drank it, he or she would immediately gain incredible energy and even become a powerful spellcaster. Of course, the premise is that he hasn't been driven crazy by all kinds of negative emotions. Zhang Cheng narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. In the 60s of the game, the Tear of Nesario was an accessory dropped by the final boss of the Blackwing's Nest dungeon, Nefarian. Its powerful attributes had always been coveted by many magic job classes. However, unlike the series of data in the game, the real Tears of Nesario was far more than just adding 1 point to spell damage and hit rate. To be more precise, the energy contained in the tears that flowed within the black crystal even contained a portion of the power of the earth that the Titans had bestowed upon the Black Dragon King. Everyone knew that the earth was the mother of all things, the foundation that gave birth to all life. That was why the true value of the Tear of Nesario was not as an accessory that increased spellcasting, but as a tear that contained the power of the earth. Of course, it was not easy to obtain this power. Apart from the powerful energy within the tear, there was also the whispers of the ancient gods that could cause the Black Dragon King to fall. In addition to the negative emotions that were enough to drive an ordinary person crazy, if Zhang Cheng dared to extract the energy within, he would probably end up as a puppet of the ancient gods or a lunatic without self-awareness. It was obvious that Nefarian did not have good intentions in giving this to him. Perhaps he wanted to cause him to fall completely into the darkness, or perhaps he wanted to use this little toy to affect his mind. In short, the Tear of Nesario would definitely cause irreparable damage to a person's mind if they carried it around for too long. Zhang Cheng did not intend to become a lackey of the ancient gods, nor did he intend to become a lunatic who only thought about destroying the world. Thus, he decisively put this dangerous treasure back into the sealed wooden box for the time being. Unless he found a way to break the seal, he would definitely not attempt to obtain the massive energy within. Pollock seemed to have sensed something. He bent down and asked in a low voice, "Master, why don't you absorb the energy it contains? I believe that with the massive amount of evil energy in your body, digesting it should not be a difficult task." "No, you don't understand." Zhang Cheng shook his head lightly and did not explain further. No matter what, the Doom Sentinel was a member of the Burning Legion. Even if it had submitted to him now, it was only because of the sealed demon soul of Arita and the Book of Dominion. Even though he didn't forcefully pull the devil out of the distorted space and time like an ordinary warlock, and then ruthlessly beat the devil up until he forced the devil to sign a series of unequal treaties, he didn't make the devil hate him to the core, and even tried every possible way to find an opportunity to launch a counterattack when he was weak. The relationship between Zhang Cheng and his subordinates was closer to a pure superior subordinate relationship. Every demon treated him as Melassa, so they did not show any signs of resistance. Instead, they thought that this was another important invasion plan of the Burning Legion. If one day they found out that their master was not the demon lord of Arita, then it was very likely that they would secretly unite and rebel against the restrictions of the Book of Dominion. Thus, Zhang Cheng did not intend to give the demons even the slightest bit of trust from the start, and would not let them know his true thoughts and plans. In addition, he was also prepared to kill all the demons when he left the world of Azeroth, and only bring their souls back to Earth. This way, he would be able to use the Soul Stone to resurrect specific demons according to different needs. At the same time, he would completely cut off the connection between these dangerous demons and the Burning Legion, and then slowly train them one by one. After all, demons were a group of insidious and cunning people. Words like loyalty and devotion were never associated with them. Chapter 352. Not long after Zhang Cheng left Blackrock Spire, two men in black cloaks were hiding under a large tree beside the bridge at the border of Twilight Forest and Westfall. They stared at each other, neither of them wanting to speak first. However, this awkward situation didn't last long. Soon, one of them took off his hood and asked in a rather low voice, "Carton, have you really thought it through?" "Yes, Edwin. I've had enough of the arrogant idiots in the Noble Council. I've had enough of my brother's loyalty hanging on the edge all day long. It's time to teach those bastards in Stormwind a lesson. Let them know what a grave mistake they've made." The other man also took off his hood and replied resolutely. Obviously, there were two suspicious people here. One was the leader of the Defias Brotherhood, Edwin Van Cleef, who was full of hatred, and the other was the younger brother of the ruler of Night Town, Duke Elroy Eberlock, Baron Carton, who had accumulated a bellyful of resentment. There is no need to ask to know that the two of them were gathered together to discuss how to launch a revenge operation against Stormwind. Edwin Van Cleef habitually stroked the stubble on his chin, as if judging whether the other person was trustworthy or not. After about 2 or 3 minutes, a playful smile appeared on his face. "My dear Carton, you have to understand that the Brotherhood's help is never free, so you have to do something to earn our trust." "Earn your trust? Haven't I done enough?" Carton frowned and asked in return. One had to know that he had used the convenience of his noble status to secretly send a lot of important information to the Brotherhood, especially regarding the deployment of troops in Westfall and Elwyn Forest. It was also because of the help of this information that the Defias Brotherhood had been able to avoid Stormwind's raids time and time again. No, you misunderstood me. I'm not saying that you haven't done enough, but that you need to send a signal to completely break with Stormwind. Edwin Van Cleef hinted meaningfully. Signal? Damn it. Don't tell me you. Carton seemed to have understood something, and his face suddenly became ugly. That's right. You have to get rid of Elro Abrock, then frame it on MI7, and announce to the public that Night Town has officially left the Stormwind Kingdom and is no longer under the rule of the Council. Only then can the Brotherhood trust you without reservation. Edwin Van Cleef calmly laid out the conditions. Ever since he had been betrayed by the Stormwind City Noble Council, he had been filled with hatred and prejudice against the nobles. So, unless the other party had cut off his escape route, he would not accept it even if they had helped him many times. Bastard! He is my brother. You want me to kill him? Carlton roared furiously. Although he despised and was dissatisfied with Ilro's foolish loyalty, he had never thought of killing him. At most, he would start a rebellion and seize control of Nighttown from him. Edwin Van Cleef had undoubtedly anticipated this situation. He sneered and questioned loudly. Idiot! What do you think we're doing now? Were they playing house? No, we are starting a revolution. A great cause to overthrow the decadent rule of Stormwind City. If you still have the mentality of hiding in the dark and playing tricks like before, I guarantee that MI7's assassins will come to your bed one day and slit your throat in your sleep. Remember, from the moment we joined forces, you already had no way out. Before he finished speaking, he suddenly shut his mouth and vigilantly held the curved sword and dagger hanging from his waist. The next second, two black figures suddenly sprang out from the shadows and rushed toward the two people who were in the middle of the negotiation at lightning speed. As a warrior, Carlton could not react in time. He could only watch as the poisoned dagger got closer and closer to his eye. Just as the sharp blade was about to pierce through his eye socket, Edwin Van Cleef moved. He raised his right hand that was holding the dagger and quickly deflected the dagger that was coming toward him. His other hand swung the curved sword and fiercely slashed at the assassin who was passing by. The latter realized that if he continued to attack, he could kill the mission target, but he would lose his life at the cost. So he decisively rolled on the ground and decisively avoided the cold blade. Despicable, dirty rat. Go to hell. Using the few seconds that his ally had bought, Carlton finally came back to his senses. He pulled out the sword that he carried with him and charged at the black figure that wanted to kill him. With the support of the warrior's unique rage, his muscles quickly bulged, and he directly knocked one of the unlucky bastards away. Edwin Van Cleef, on the other hand, spat out a cloud of gray dust from his sleeve, blinding his opponent's eyes on the spot. Then he threw his dagger with all his might, piercing through the chest of the unlucky guy who was sent flying. After doing all this, he quietly went behind the second assassin and chopped off his head with his scimitar. With the scarlet blood spurting out, the battle that started and ended suddenly came to an end. Do you see that? These guys are the assassins sent by MI7. If you don't want to die, you have to abandon all unrealistic fantasies and cooperate with us. As long as the corrupt noble's rule is not overthrown, assassinations like this will never stop. Edwin Van Cleef explained without looking up as he wiped the blood off his weapon. Damn it. All right, I promise you. But you have to help me. After all, the commander of the Night Watch is Althea. She won't let anyone kill her father. Carlton closed his eyes and struggled for a moment before he finally made up his mind. The reason was simple. He didn't want to die in his sleep for no reason, and he didn't want to be sent to the gallows in Stormwind City. Don't worry, my friend. The assassins of the Brotherhood will be able to infiltrate Nighttown in 4 days at the latest. At that time, you won't have to do it yourself. Just do as I say. All right, that's all for today. I still have a lot of things to take care of. After saying this, Edwin Van Cleef quickly slipped into the shadows and disappeared without a trace. Carlton didn't waste any time. He rode his warhorse and ran along the main road in the direction of Nighttown. Before the assassins of the Brotherhood arrived, he had to talk to his daughter Zenobia and make sure that the high elf mage from Dalaran wouldn't interfere. When the two left the bridge that connected the Twilight Forest and the Western Wastelands, a white-haired dwarf wearing a black and white robe and holding a staff twice as tall as himself appeared out of thin air at the spot where they had been talking. Chapter 353. A few days later, in a shabby tavern in the old district of Stormwind City, Matthias Shore was sitting in a corner, drinking cheap, strong rum while flipping through the latest intelligence collected by his men. Perhaps no one would have thought that the fearsome leader of MI7 would actually be dealing with the secrets hidden in the dark in such a place. However, most people did not know that this tavern was actually a backup base set up by MI7 a long time ago. It was planned to be used for some intelligence gathering, assassination, and other sabotage activities when Stormwind City fell. However, Ever since the Parliament decided to start monitoring the operations of MI7, he activated this place and dealt with the parts that really needed to be kept secret. As for the less important parts, he put on a show in front of the special envoy of the Parliament. It had to be said that in front of the cunning and experienced leader of MI7, the little tricks of Onyxia, the princess of the Black Dragon, did not work at all. On the contrary, it aroused unnecessary vigilance. At least for now, Matthias Shore strengthened the investigation of the identity of Catron Prester. In just half a month's time, a large amount of information about the Pristos family had been sent over, especially the human identity that Deathwing had once used, the Lord of Pristos. It was completely dug up. Fortunately, there were not many people who knew the true identity of Nesario, at least not many people in the Alliance at present. Hence, MI7 only knew that he was once a popular man in the palace of the kingdom of Lordaeron and was deeply trusted by King Tyrenas Menethil. He even almost married Princess Gallia Menethil and became the brother-in-law of Lich King Arthas. There was no doubt that this almost legendary life experience almost made Matthias Shore feel extremely unreal. However, this did not prevent him from doubting the authenticity of the Countess' identity. After all, for nobles, it was a very proud and glorious thing to be able to clearly state their father, grandfather, great-grandfather, great-grandfather, and even the founder of the family. However, Countess Catrona Prester had never flaunted her family's glorious history in public from the beginning to the end. Based on this point alone, he dared to conclude that this woman was either an imposter or hiding some unspeakable secret. Unfortunately, MI7 hadn't found any valuable information yet. Plus, the other party had taken control of the Parliament and could influence the decision of Bolvar for Dragon, so they couldn't act rashly for the time being. Otherwise, it would worsen the turbulent situation caused by the disappearance of the king. Just when Matthias Shaw was frowning and trying to find a clue from the messy information, the air in the tavern suddenly became blurry. In just 3 to 5 seconds, a mysterious person wearing a dark blue robe appeared out of thin air in the dimly lit tavern. Out of his first reaction, he quickly pulled out his weapon and entered stealth mode. At the same time, he made tactical gestures to several other MI7 members. In an instant, 6 top-notch assassins silently sealed off all the exits, intending to take down the intruder first. However, before they could make a move, the mysterious hooded man raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Ha! In an instant, light purple arcane energy spread out with him as the center. 3 assassins who couldn't dodge in time were forcefully pulled off the ground by an unknown force. They floated in the air with a confused look on their faces. They couldn't even understand what kind of magic this was. "Who are you?" One of the MI7 members who was floating in the air squinted his eyes and whispered, "Sorry, you don't have the right to know who I am. My dear friend, I think you should let them out. Otherwise, I won't dare to tell you the truth of my investigation." As he spoke, the mysterious man casually threw a pink fluorite to the position where Matthias Shaw was in stealth mode. Knowing that he had been exposed, the latter caught the gemstone without hesitation and left the cover of the shadows at the same time. He had just recognized the intruder from the gemstone in his hand. He turned around and ordered his trusted subordinates, "All of you leave. He's not an enemy." After receiving the order, the assassins quickly exited the tavern without saying a word. After all of them had left, Matthias Shaw returned to his seat. He grabbed the bottle and poured a full glass of rum for the mysterious man. "Tell me, how did you get in?" "If I remember correctly, this place has been reinforced with special magic. It's impossible to cast any teleportation or flash spells. Besides, I don't think I've given you the address here." You have to understand that magic itself is a very complicated thing. Even the most powerful spell must have its weak side, or rather, a loophole. I just happened to find the loophole, so naturally, I was able to bypass the magic protection. As for the address, I used a small positioning spell. The mysterious man explained as he took off his hood, revealing a head of short black hair. Obviously, he was Zhang Chung, who had just returned to Stormwind City after crossing the Burning Plains and the Reedridge Mountains. As for the Doomsday Guardian Palak, he was directly banished back to the distorted space and time. In any case, bringing a huge demon into the human world was too eye-catching. Anyway, as long as he didn't leave Azeroth for the time being, he could summon him through the ritual at any time. Incredible. You're stronger than the last time we met. Even I, who don't know magic, can clearly feel it. Matthias Shaw carefully sized up the young man, standing in front of him, his face showing undisguised surprise. As a thief, he was far more sensitive to auras than ordinary people. He could often identify the difference in strength between himself and his target at a glance, and then use this as a reference to decide who could be assassinated and who couldn't. Zhang Cheng smiled and replied, "Thanks to you, this dangerous journey has allowed me to gain a lot of useful magic knowledge, so my spellcasting ability has naturally been strengthened." "Oh, yes, this is the information you wanted." After saying that, he placed a piece of paper full of small words on the table. In fact, the reason why he could locate the position of the leader of MI7 was not because of the power of a mage, but because of the power of a warlock. The last time they met, he secretly extracted a trace of life energy from Matthias Shaw's body. Therefore, as long as the other party entered the range of his perception, he would be immediately detected. No matter if it was stealth or invisibility magic, it would not work. Of course, this ability had a great limit. It was like remembering someone's name. Once you remembered too much, or if you didn't see them for a long time, it would not take long for you to slowly forget them. Chapter 354. The content of the note was not much. Matthias sure finished reading it in just half a minute. Soon, a solemn expression appeared on his face. Although he had expected that there would be a mastermind manipulating the stupid orcs, he had never thought that it would be dragons. 2 terrifying adult black dragons. As a human, he would never forget how the veterans who had participated in the Second War with the orcs described the scene of the Dragonroar clan riding the baby red dragons to attack the Alliance army. Hell of despair. There was no hope of victory at all. The only thing he could do was to pray that he could die a glorious death like a real warrior. Fortunately, the heroic mage Ronin and his teammates destroyed the divine weapon demon's soul in time, allowing the red dragon Queen Alexstrasza to get rid of the control and turn the tide of the war. The baby dragons were already so destructive, not to mention the adult dragons. Often, a dragon's breath could cause hundreds of deaths. No one would want to be the enemy of the dragons, especially the black dragons that have been determined to be fallen. Matthias sure frowned. After a full 5 minutes, he took a deep breath and asked with a serious face, "How did you get this information? Don't tell me that you could easily spy on the secrets of the 2 adult black dragons just by taking a trip to the Burning Plains." Of course not. I personally joined their camp." Zhang Cheng pursed his lips and replied meaningfully. "Joined?" A hint of vigilance flashed in the eyes of the leader of MI7. "That's right. One of them invited me, and I gladly agreed. To some extent, I should be considered a double agent now." After saying that, Zhang Cheng took a sip of the wine glass. However, the taste of the low-quality rum made him frown immediately. "You mean that you will provide us with information about the Black Dragon, and, at the same time, provide him with information about us, right?" Matthias sure quickly realized the subtext of the words just now. Instead of denouncing him, he showed an interested expression. Zhang Cheng put down the glass and nodded with a smile. "Yes, but you have to understand that dragons are extremely proud and conceited creatures. That's why he hasn't asked me about the Alliance yet. But at the same time, I can't guarantee that I won't ask about it in the future. In addition, I have no interest in overthrowing the royal power, so I will never participate in it." "I understand. Thank you. If they ask about it one day, please tell them everything you know. I don't want to lose an indispensable source of information because of a little concealment." Matthias Shaw was indeed the brain of the entire MI7. He made the most rational judgment in the blink of an eye. No matter what, having a way to understand the enemy was much better than not knowing anything, even if he had to reveal some of his secrets. "Don't worry. I'm not the kind of fool who would sacrifice my life for some ridiculous reason, and I won't sacrifice anything for this kingdom. If there's nothing else, I'll take my leave." Countess Katrana Prester, is probably waiting for me to visit her." As the last word fell, Zhang Cheng placed one hand on his chest and bowed slightly. He turned around and was about to push open the door to leave the simple tavern. However, before he could take 2 steps forward, Matthias Shaw suddenly raised his head and asked in a low voice, "Since you've already confirmed the identity of the enemy, do you also know how to expose their true colors, especially the one who controls the Stormwind City Council?" "Sorry, I don't want to provoke a deadly enemy for myself, and I don't want to expose myself to the enemy's line of sight. So, please think of a way slowly. Lastly, I'll give you a hint. Marshal Reginald Windsor once saw a vision of the future in Karazhan. He's the key to ending all of this." Zhang Qing gave a hint without batting an eyelid. "Marshal Reginald Windsor? Damn it!" Matthias Shaw's expression changed drastically. He quickly began to flip through the information written in various secret languages on the table. Soon, he found one of them. He gritted his teeth and cursed. "Bastard! How could it be so coincidental? Marshal Reginald Windsor was actually captured by the Dark Iron Dwarves in an attack 6 days ago." When Zhang Cheng heard this, he couldn't help but laugh out loud. While laughing, he teased, "Isn't this just right? You can use the pretense of being the marshal to let those adventurers enter the Burning Plains and the Blackstone Tower continuously. At the same time, you can investigate the situation inside. And I think that Sir Marshal might give you a surprise. Hiring adventurers." Matthias Shaw's eyes lit up slightly. "Yes, there was an interesting legend in my hometown. A long, long time ago, there was a country that was repeatedly ransacked by an evil dragon. In order to protect his country, the king began to recruit warriors from the outside. He also promised that whoever could kill the dragon would be given his beloved daughter in marriage and half of the treasures in the national treasury. Soon, a famous warrior thought that he was up to the task and went to the palace to accept the mission. At this point, Zhang Cheng deliberately paused for a moment and revealed a sarcastic smile on his face. The ending was that the warrior killed the dragon? Matthias Shaw asked with interest. As a person who hid in a corner to plot, he always felt that the answer wouldn't be too simple. Zhang Cheng stretched out a finger and shook it gently. No, the ending was that the warrior died easily under the flames spewed out by the dragon. But the king didn't pin his hopes on one person. He recruited thousands of warriors in one breath. In the end, the dragon was finally seriously injured in the battle and was killed by the last guy who took advantage of the situation. This story tells us 2 very important messages. First, never pin your hopes on one person. Second, when you use wealth, status, and beautiful women as rewards, people will often explode with unprecedented power. Interesting. I have to admit that your story is very enlightening. I think I know what to do. Matthias Shaw's gaze suddenly became deep. Things like tricking people had always been MI7's specialty. He didn't mind making use of the adventurers who stayed in the inn all day to create trouble to achieve his own goals. I wish you success in your mission. Zhang Qing muttered softly without turning his head. Then he put on his hood to cover his face, pushed open the door, and disappeared into the narrow alley of the old city. He didn't return to the inn immediately. Instead, he walked in the direction of the Stormwind City's palace fortress. Chapter 355. Countess, here's the tea you asked for. A young maid pushed open the door and walked into the room. She carefully placed the steaming teapot and the tray on the table. Then, she picked up the teapot and poured a cup full of fragrant hot tea. Put it here. A woman with a mature aura stroked her long black hair and waved her hand impatiently. The maid seemed to be used to her bad attitude. She quickly bowed and left. As soon as she left, a man with long brown hair and a beard suddenly laughed and teased. "Dear Katrana, tell me, which brainless idiot has annoyed you?" "Shut up, Volvar. It's all because you pushed all the work to me." The woman rolled her eyes in annoyance. Obviously, the man and woman were none other than Onyxia, the black dragon princess who had transformed into Katrana Prester, and Bolvar Dragon who had helped the young Anduin Rin rule the Stormwind Kingdom. Judging from the ambiguous atmosphere in the room, perhaps no one would have thought that one of them would be beheaded and hung on the city wall of Stormwind City in the future, and the other would become the successor of the Lich King Arthas. Perhaps this was the interesting part of fate. Even the bronze dragons who were known to control time could not predict what would happen to them. Just when Bolvar for Dragon was admiring the human appearance of the Black Dragon Princess, an elite guard in full plate armor suddenly barged in and bowed with one hand on his chest. Report, Honorable Countess. There's a young mage outside who wishes to meet you. He also gave me this. Onyxia noticed the unknown black, shiny object in the guard's hand, and her pupils contracted. Perhaps ordinary people would think that it was a piece of obsidian or gemstone, but she could tell at a glance that it was the scale of her brother, Nefarian. Ever since the disappearance of the Black Dragon King and his mate, the brother and sister had shouldered the heavy responsibility of rebuilding the Black Dragon army. This was especially so for the female Onyxia. In order to ensure that there were enough dragon whelps for the army to use, she desperately laid eggs in the nest. Currently, she had accumulated more than a few thousand eggs. If all of these dragon eggs hatched and grew into young dragons between 7 to 10 meters long, then they alone could sweep across the human world and establish a country ruled by black dragons. Unfortunately, even though dragons grew very quickly during their infancy, the food provided by Dustwallow Marsh was not enough to feed so many young dragons. That was why she entered the human world. On one hand, she wanted to learn from her father and weaken the alliance from the inside, especially the strength of the humans. On the other hand, she wanted to gather food so that more baby dragons could grow healthily. The Black Dragon Princess didn't understand why her brother, who was hiding in the upper level of the Blackstone Pagoda, would suddenly send someone to her. Bolvar for Dragon noticed the hesitation of the girl he liked, so he quickly stood up and asked, "What happened? If you don't want to see this person, I can send him away for you." "No, I just happened to recall some childhood memories. If I'm not mistaken, he should be my childhood playmate. I'll leave today's work to you. Do it well, and don't let me down." Onyxia pretended to be playful and blinked her eyes. She then stood up and followed the guard out of the room. Bolvar for Dragon looked at her seductive figure and lost his virginity for a few seconds. When he regained his senses and saw the pile of documents on the table, a bitter smile appeared on his face. "Oh, my holy light. She's really a little fairy that makes people love and hate her. It seems that I've really fallen in love." 10 minutes later, Zhang Qing finally saw the Black Dragon Princess at the entrance of Stormwind Keep. Both of them didn't speak after they met. They just looked at each other. After a long time, Onyxia couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "Mortal, who are you? Why do you have this thing?" "Me? I'm just an insignificant person. I'm not worthy of your personal attention. As for this scale, it was given to me by your brother. He said that if I come to Stormwind, I must come and meet you." Zhang Qing bowed calmly. As a sorcerer, he could tell at a glance that there was a huge gap between the Black Dragon Princess and the Black Dragon Prince. Maybe it was because she spent too much energy on scheming, or maybe it was because she had laid too many eggs in a short period of time. In short, Onyxia's life force was only about half of Nefarian's. Nefarian had even changed his pure flames into shadow flames after studying the shadow energy in depth. No wonder she was the first adult dragon to be killed, and the direct descendant of the Dragon King. Insignificant person? I don't think a sorcerer who can silently place more than 40 invisible arcane runes around his body is insignificant. Besides, you're not just a sorcerer. The dark energy of a sorcerer also flows in your body. Onyxia directly pointed out Zhang Cheng's little trick. If it wasn't for the fear of exposing her identity, she would have immediately transformed into a deadly dragon's breath to see if the runes could block her breath that she was so proud of. "Haha, all right. I'm actually an ally of your brother, His Highness Nefarian. I'm here today to ask for your help." Zhang Cheng smiled and shrugged. There was no awkwardness of being exposed on the spot. "Ally? Are you sure you're not a servant?" The Black Dragon Princess was obviously shocked. She then asked, "What do you want me to help you with?" Zhang Cheng replied without hesitation, "Yes, we're allies. You can verify this with His Highness at any time. As for the help, it's simple. First, give me a few dragon eggs. Secondly, I want to get the teleportation permit from the Royal Mage Tower in Stormwind City." Onyxia looked puzzled. "Teleportation permit? Why don't you go yourself? I remember that this thing shouldn't be difficult to get, right? Giving you a few dragon eggs is not a problem. It's simple, but I don't want them to record the magic waves when I cast spells. Zhang Cheng explained meaningfully. I see. All right, I'll have someone send the permit to your place in 3 days. But in return, you have to do me a little favor. Onyxia raised the corner of her mouth and put forward a condition. What favor? Zhang Cheng really couldn't think of anything that the Black Dragon Princess, who had already taken control of the noble parliament, couldn't do. Act as my childhood playmate and accompany me to the ball tomorrow. Ball? Damn it. Don't tell me you want me to provoke Bolvar Fordergon's jealousy? Chapter 356. Zhang Cheng could not help but sigh at the stupidity of Bolvar Fordragon when he roughly calculated the number of Dragonborn disguised as royal guards in Stormwind Keep. As a powerful paladin, he should have been able to easily detect the difference between humans and Dragonborn. However, he did not even have the slightest reaction when more than 1/3 of his soldiers were replaced. It was no wonder that Matthias Shaw had never considered using any means such as assassination before knowing the true identity of Countess Katrana Prester. Otherwise, the regent would have personally torn apart this bastard who dared to lay his hands on his beloved woman, even without Onyxia's transformation. Perhaps some behavioral experts would think that a person's behavior was usually composed of 50% rationality and 50% emotion. Once rationality overpowered emotion, then this person would be very calm. However, if rationality overpowered emotion, then this person would be more impulsive. However, in Zhang Cheng's opinion, a person's behavior had never had much to do with rationality. Strong emotions and desires were the root cause. Just think about it. How many people in the world had unintentionally done things that made them feel ashamed and regretful in order to be different from others? How many people had given up the benefits that they could easily get for the so-called dignity, principles, and face? How many people had to give up their career, dreams, and ambitions in order to maintain their family, love, affection, and friendship? How many people had to do a job that could support their family, but was very annoying? If human behavior was really guided by rationality, then the above wrong choices would not have happened. This should be like robots, automatically filtering out all the unfavorable factors and walking on the path that would allow them to gain more benefits and improve their social status. Countless facts had proven that rationality was nothing in the face of strong emotions and desires. Therefore, it was not surprising that Bolvar Fordragon was being played by the princess of the Black Dragon. Fortunately, no matter how turbulent and dark the political situation in Stormwind City was, it had little to do with Zhang Cheng. After bidding farewell to Onyxia, he directly crossed the stone arch bridge and entered the dwarven area. He wanted to see how many anti-magic bullets were made. However, before he could get close to the blacksmith shop, he heard a fierce argument coming from inside. Damn it! Get out! How many times have I told you? This is not for sale. The angry voice of the old dwarf echoed in the dirty alley. Not for sale? Don't lie to me. Dwarf, this sword had been here for 2 weeks. The owner of the sword you speak of has yet to appear. I don't think anyone would leave such a powerful magical weapon in your shop for 2 weeks without coming to retrieve it. Don't tell me you think I can't afford it. Another slightly shrill female voice followed closely behind. Bye? Ha ha! Don't make me laugh. What an arrogant human girl. The value of this sword is far beyond your imagination. Looking at the beautiful blade and the runes engraved on it, even the most powerful defensive magic would be as fragile as a piece of paper in front of it. Give it up. You can't afford it, and I'm not qualified to sell it to anyone. As the last word fell, the blacksmith shop did not emit a wisp of pungent white smoke. Needless to say, the old dwarf had started smoking his beloved pipe again. Slightly curious, Zhang Cheng once again walked into the small blacksmith shop. He immediately saw Krine Bronzehammer sitting on a chair, his face full of enjoyment as he exhaled smoke. Standing not far in front of him was a young human girl wearing a thorium plate armor. She was in her early 20s and had long, dazzling golden hair. She wore a unique badge on her chest. Even though he was not familiar with the various military organizations in Stormwind City, Zhang Cheng could tell at a glance that this girl was a holy knight belonging to the Storm Knights. As for whether she was a trainee knight, an official knight, or some other position, he did not know. Ever since Lothar's Brotherhood of the Iron Horse was heavily damaged in the Second Orc War, it had been in a slump. In order to have a trump card that could be used at critical moments, the Stormwind Kingdom invested a large sum of money to establish a new Storm Knights and ordered the Brotherhood of the Iron Horse to merge into the Storm Knights. It could be said that the status of the Storm Knights was equivalent to the Silver Hand of the Lordaeron Kingdom. It was one of the most important elite military forces in the Stormwind Kingdom. Every knight had a noble title. Regardless of whether it was their weapons or armor, they were all enchanted with various spells with the help of the Royal Mage Guild. Even in the face of the endless Scourge army, they could enter and leave 7 times out of 7. Zhang Cheng did not understand why a knight of the Storm Knights would appear in the old dwarf's blacksmith shop. While he was in a daze, Crine Bronzehammer finally noticed him standing at the door. He immediately jumped up and shouted happily, "Oh my God, you're finally back. Quick, look at the sword I made with my own hands. I swear on my beard, there's definitely no other magical weapon in Stormwind City that can compare to it." What sword? Zhang Cheng was stunned. He did not see any magical sword in the shop that was worthy of his attention. This is what I want to introduce to you. It's a weapon that can refract light. Mora's Spellbreaker. As he spoke, the old dwarf took a long sword from the rightmost side of the weapon rack. The hilt was silver, and the blade was almost transparent blue. If it was not for the slight reflection caused by the sunlight outside, no one would have noticed the deadly sharp blade. "Oh, incredible! How did you do it?" Zhang Cheng took the sword and gently touched the cold blade, feeling the strong power contained in it. Unlike most of the weapons used for close combat in Azeroth, this sword was only 2 fingers long, almost the same as a rapier. Its length was also less than 70 centimeters. Rather than calling it a sword, it was more like a large toothpick. However, this toothpick had the power to make all spellcasters tremble. That was Spellbreaker. Any defensive magic that was hit by this sword had a certain chance of disintegrating instantly. Once it pierced into the body, it would disrupt the magic circuit in the spellcaster's body, causing some spells to be unable to be cast normally. Most importantly, it could continuously extract the magic energy of all nearby enemies during battle and transfer it to the wielder. No wonder a knight of the Storm Knights would take a fancy to this sword. Any warrior, knight, or thief who wielded this sword could easily defeat a mage or warlock who was on par with them, or even stronger than them. Chapter 357. Light, nimble, elegant, deadly. No one would have thought that the dwarf, who had always been carefree, would forge a magical weapon in the style of the elves. Not to mention others. Even Crine Bronzehammer did not understand why he was so obsessed that he threw away the original design of the two-handed greatsword. Following the guidance of his inspiration, he turned the greatsword into a large toothpick. Although the power and appearance of the mage were enough to prove his talent as a blacksmith, he still felt an indescribable awkwardness whenever he saw the small blade. Zhang Cheng, who had always been good at observing people's expressions, noticed the old dwarf's reaction. He couldn't help but nod with a smile. "Well, I think the hidden attribute of the dragon steel must have been activated by the runes you carved on it. Don't worry, I will find a qualified owner for it. That would be for the best. Oh, the box over there contains the bullets you want. I've asked a master engineer to make 600 rounds. Every round is filled with the best dense powder. It's guaranteed to penetrate the toughest armor and scales." Crine Bronzehammer pointed at the small sealed wooden box in the corner of the room. "Thank you. If there is nothing else, I will go back first. You must know that the long journey has made me tired. I urgently need to take a bath, eat a sumptuous meal, and have a good sleep." After saying that, Zhang Cheng did not care about the others. He picked up the slightly heavy box and turned to leave the blacksmith shop, walking towards the Golden Rose Inn in the trade zone. But before he could walk more than 10 meters, the female knight wearing the badge of the Storm Knights chased after him and shouted loudly, "Wait!" Miss, are you calling me? Zhang Chung stopped and deliberately put on a puzzled expression. He was very clear that the other party had her eyes on the spell breaker that he had just obtained. But considering the various rules that holy knights had to abide by, the possibility of a melodramatic robbery was not high. Yes, that sword. It belongs to you? The female knight asked nervously. That's right. Zhang Chung gave an affirmative answer without hesitation. Then can you sell it to me? After all, judging from your attire, you should be a magician. A magician can't unleash its true power. The female knight stuttered as she explained her intentions. I'm sorry, beautiful lady, but I'm afraid I have to turn you down. Firstly, as a mage, I don't lack money at all. Secondly, I don't think you have the ability to pay for it. Lastly, do you think I would sell a weapon that could threaten me? No, I'm not a fool, so please go back. After saying this, Zhang Chung placed one hand on his chest and bowed before continuing to walk along the street. However, the young female knight obviously did not intend to give up. She continued to pester him. Mr. Mage, don't you understand? If this weapon is in the hands of our knights, how many evil undead, sorcerers, mages, and demons can we kill? It is a treasure given to this world by the holy light. You should not let it be covered in dust for selfish reasons. Sorry, I don't believe in the holy light. Zhang Chung pursed his lips without even turning his head. At the same time, he quickened his pace, intending to get rid of this little tale. What? You don't believe in the holy light? The female knight seemed to have heard the arrival of the end of the world. She stood there dumbfounded. However, this only lasted for a few seconds before she quickly caught up and asked loudly, Why? Why don't you believe in the holy light? Don't you understand that the holy light is the only divine power that can purify our souls? Mr. Mage, you should embrace the holy light, not reject it. Damn it, are you here to preach? Zhang Chung suddenly felt a headache. He turned around and glared at the other party. Although he had been in Azeroth for a while, this was the first time he had encountered such a situation. It was important to know that most of the priests, monks, and nuns of the Church of the Holy Light would at most preach some of the teachings of the Holy Light to passers-by. It was up to them whether they listened or not. However, the female knight in front of him was obviously different. She was very similar to the religious fanatics of the Scarlet Crusade. Preach? No, I'm just trying to save a lost soul. Mr. Mage, please pray with me to the Holy Light. It will listen to your repentance and forgive you for the sins you've committed. After saying this, the female knight grabbed Zhang Cheng's hand and dragged him in the direction of the Church of the Holy Light. Although Zhang Cheng had dozens of ways to break free, he considered that using magic would attract the attention of the Royal Mage Guild. Therefore, he resisted the urge to kick the other party away and let the female knight pull him into the Church of the Holy Light. A clergyman guarding the door saw the two of them and immediately showed an expression of not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He took the initiative to block the way and asked the female knight, Kara, what are you doing? Lord Bishop, this Mr. Mage said that he doesn't believe in the holy light, so I brought him here to worship so that his soul can be bathed in the holy light. The female knight, called Kara, bent down elegantly and bowed. My holy light, let go. How many times have I told you? Things like faith can't be forced. I'm sorry, Mr. Mage, this child Kara is a little stubborn. Please believe me, she doesn't mean any harm. The balding old man explained embarrassedly. As a bishop, he could clearly feel that the young man standing in front of him was surrounded by dense defensive runes made of arcane energy. His powerful strength and spellcasting skills were simply beyond the level of an ordinary archmage. A spellcaster like this would not believe in anything other than himself. Even the Church of Holy Light, the #1 belief system in the Alliance, was no exception. It's okay, I forgive her. However, I hope that a similar situation will not happen a second time. Otherwise, I reserve the right to fight back. Zhang Chung shook off the reluctant female knight's hand and directly crossed the stone arch bridge, disappearing at the end of the gate tower leading to the trade zone. When he was completely gone, the old bishop used the scepter in his hand to lightly knock the female knight's head. He gritted his teeth and reprimanded, Stupid girl, do you know how much trouble you've caused today? If I'm not wrong, that young man is a genuine archmage. Once he starts to cast powerful offensive spells, everything within 100 meters may be affected. Ouch! Ouch! Archmage? Him? How is that possible? He doesn't look much older than me. Kara covered her head with an aggrieved expression on her face. Sigh. The power of arcane magic never depends on age, my child. Some mages can only release a few fireballs and frost arrows in their lifetime, but some mages can master powerful abilities that others envy in a very short time. This is the difference between a genius and an ordinary person. Well, it's useless to say too much to you. Come, tell me what happened. Chapter 358. After returning to the Golden Rose Hotel, Zhang Cheng greeted the mature and beautiful lady boss, Alazan. He then returned to his own room and began to concoct the first real evolution potion. He did not add dragon's blood, demonic blood, or anything else with strong side effects. He only added the intense radiation from the crystals in the Titan biological experiment site. In fact, until now, he still did not understand why the crystals only reacted to dark energy. Could it be that dark energy was the most powerful energy in the universe that made up the world of Azeroth? Or was it that dark energy was actually a manifestation of life, form, and consciousness? With Zhang Cheng's current knowledge, he was far from being able to solve the mystery. He had not even fully digested the knowledge he got from the memories of the demon Erita, so there was no need to continue to delve into the content that was temporarily beyond his understanding. After about half an hour, a small bottle of evolution potion designed for warriors was completed. Due to the maximum use of the red crystals that contained life elements, the color of the potion was abnormally dark red, like blood flowing from veins. Feeling the energy radiation emitted from the potion bottle, the young man standing at the door of the room swallowed his saliva subconsciously. He became unusually nervous, because he knew that this potion bottle was most likely prepared for him. Simon, I remember not long ago that when the success rate is more than 50%, I will give you a choice. Now, the time is ripe. Come, make your choice. Drink it and become stronger, or give it up and use the traditional way to gain power. You should know that there are not many shortcuts to becoming a powerful warrior. First, you have to put in the effort, and then there will be rewards, Zhang Cheng said as he placed the potion bottle in front of the young man. After a period of research, he had basically figured out what kind of power system the so-called rage was. Simply put, the warriors of Azeroth absorbed the ubiquitous energy in the air to strengthen their muscles, blood vessels, and even every cell. Although they could not release the energy stored in their bodies through a medium like mages, warlocks, priests, and paladins, they could let the energy flow in their bodies along with their blood. When the energy gathered in certain organs or limbs in a short period of time, it could produce superhuman strength and speed. However, due to the lack of control, the warriors could not actively control the energy stored in their bodies. They could only rely on the help of intense emotions. For example, the pain after being injured, the splashing of dazzling blood from a weapon, and other external stimuli. Now, what he needed to do was to try and see if he could break the shackles of the passive rage so that the warrior could be like the Holy Knight and freely manipulate the magic energy stored in his muscles, blood, and cells. Simon clenched his fist tightly as he stared at the evolution potion on the table. After about a minute, he took a deep breath, grabbed the bottle, and gulped it down. Then, he said with a serious face, "Master, this is my choice. I want power." He wanted to change the fate of ordinary people, even if the price is pain and death. Zhang Cheng nodded with satisfaction. "Great. I like your attitude. Don't worry. I've carefully adjusted the dosage. In theory, it shouldn't exceed the limit of what your body can bear, but it's hard to say for the mental side." As soon as he finished speaking, the young man's body suddenly twitched, and then he fell to the ground with a thud. He kept twitching as if he had epilepsy. In the blink of an eye, some of the more muscular parts of his body began to bulge. Occasionally, the sound of bones cracking could be heard. Some parts of his body were torn apart because of the rapid rupture and reconstruction of his muscles. Bright red blood flowed out from the wounds. No normal person could endure such pain. After clenching his teeth and enduring for less than a minute, Simon finally began to scream loudly. His bloodshot eyes were scarier than a demon's. Ah! Hold on. Don't let your rationality collapse. Otherwise, even if you survive, you will only become a beast. Zhang Cheng sat on the chair and reminded him softly. He had already expected this to happen, so he used arcane runes to isolate the transmission of sound. Otherwise, this crazy scream would have attracted half of the soldiers in Stormwind City. Bang! 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 In order to vent the physical pain, the young man began to hit his head against the wall. Unfortunately, no matter how hard he hit, he could not faint. In the end, he could only curl up into a ball and use all his strength to pinch his arm. Even if his nails were deeply embedded in his skin and muscles, he could not feel the slightest bit of pain. Maybe it was a few minutes, maybe it was a few hours. Simon, who was about to go crazy, could not judge how long the drastic changes in his body lasted. Anyway, when the pain gradually faded, he found that his clothes were all torn to pieces. His originally tan skin had turned into a yellowish-gray rock, and the calluses on his hand from sword practice were nowhere to be found. He did not grow taller. He did not have exaggerated muscles. He did not have the ability to cast spells. Looking at his new body that seemed to have been reborn, he could not help but raise his head and ask, "Master, what is going on?" "Ah, it seems that the evolution is quite perfect, even far beyond my expectations." "Do you think that evolution is to strengthen the body and make the muscles more developed?" "No, the real evolution is from the inside out. Many times, exaggerated muscles do not mean powerful combat strength." Perhaps this explanation is a little too general, but it doesn't matter. Let's do a little test, and you will understand. After saying that, Zhang Cheng raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Snap! In an instant, 3 arcane missiles drew an arc in the air and flew toward Simon. Out of his subconscious reaction after being attacked, he immediately exerted force on his feet and jumped back, intending to avoid the arcane missile at the front. But what he did not expect was that this jump was far beyond the usual distance of 2 to 3 meters. With a bang, he hit a dining table 7 or 8 meters away, and then hit the wall behind him. With just a moment of violence, he crushed the hardwood table into pieces. Even the sharpest wooden thorn could not penetrate his slightly weird-colored skin. The other 2 arcane missiles that caught up and hit him in the chest only caused minor damage, neither breaking his ribs nor damaging any of his organs in his chest. Chapter 359. Do you feel it? Your new body. Zhang Cheng narrowed his mouth and asked with a faint smile. As an outsider with a deep understanding of Azeroth's history, he undoubtedly knew very well that the so-called humans, dwarves, elves, trolls, and other human creatures in this world actually originated from a powerful supernatural force called the Curse of Flesh. The original purpose of the Titans' transformation of this planet was not to protect the life on the planet, but to protect the souls of their own kind inside the planet from being eroded by the ancient gods. What they wanted was not a group of living beings with their own thoughts and desires, but a group of slaves who could strictly follow the rules. Therefore, whether it was the Earth Elves, the Vrykul, or the mechanical gnomes, when they were first created, they were all inorganic life forms, such as rocks, metals, and so on. But with the advent of the Curse of Flesh, the Earth Elves gradually became troglodytes, dwarves and Vrykul became humans, and the mechanical gnomes became ordinary gnomes. It could be said that without the help of the ancient gods, the whole of Azeroth would now be nothing more than a huge, lifeless prison. The Guardians left behind by the Titans strictly followed the pre-established procedures and meticulously monitored the operation of the whole world until the new Titans awakened their self-consciousness. But unfortunately, their plan failed. Just like the line in the movie Jurassic Park, life will always find its own way out. Under the effect of the Curse of Flesh, all kinds of intelligent life began to survive, reproduce, and grow in Azeroth, creating one glorious civilization after another. Even the exiled elemental lords could escape the prison that imprisoned them through a series of methods. Not only did the Titans' selfishness not have much of an effect, but they also provided the ancient gods with countless targets to tempt. For example, the famous Deathwing, Nesario, or the fall of countless green dragons and druids in the Erosion Emerald Dream. To put it bluntly, these Titan creations called guardians were simply too weak in front of the ancient gods. They were corrupted, and depraved. There weren't many normal ones left at the moment. Of course, from the point of view of life evolution, humans affected by the curse of flesh did indeed degenerate. There was neither eternal life nor a body that would never fall ill. The potion Zhang Cheng created relied on the radiation of the crystal to activate the power hidden in the bloodline of the user and restore part of the ancestral power. It had to be said that his idea was successful. The experimental subjects not only obtained the magic resistance unique to the Vrykul people, but even their skin showed signs of petrification. Unbelievable! This was simply too inconceivable. Master, how did you do it? Simon asked as he crushed the table leg on the ground into powder. If it was in the past, it would be impossible for him to have such a strong grip. But now, he could easily do it without using much strength. Trust me, the specific principles are too complicated for you. You only need to know that this body contains the talent that all warriors dream of. That's enough. Now, I'll give you some time off. Whether it's to go out on adventure or to hunt powerful monsters by yourself, go through a few intense battles. This is the only way you can become stronger as soon as possible. Oh, by the way, bring Kinder with you. Having said that, Zhang Chen glanced at the dog-headed man who was busy carving all sorts of totems in the corner. As you wish. Please rest assured, I won't let you down. Simon patted his chest hard to give a guarantee. He believed that with his new body, he would be able to learn more and more powerful martial arts. Even the legendary shield wall, mortal strike, and bloodthirst that only the most elite warriors could learn were no exception. At the same time, far away in Night Town, a long simmering fratricide finally began slowly. With the help of the Brotherhood's assassins, in just half a day, Baron Carlton successfully eliminated the loyal servants and housekeepers, and at the same time captured Althea, who controlled the Night Watchers. Coupled with the magic power of his daughter, Zenobia, no one dared to stand up and question his rule. Sitting in a chair that did not belong to him, he looked down at his brother, who was covered in blood. After a full minute, he said, "You know what, Elro, whether you believe it or not, I didn't want to hurt you and Althea at first, and I didn't want to end our brotherhood in this way. But you're too cowardly and disappoint me. I have to stand up and overthrow your rule to prevent the family that has been passed down for hundreds of years from perishing. Idiot, what you're doing now is leading the family to perish. Stop it, Carlton, before it's too late." Duke Elro Ebelok struggled to raise his head and yelled. He still could not believe that his own brother would one day launch a coup. "Ha ha! No, it's too late, my dear brother. Just half an hour ago, I killed the tax officer sent by Stormwind City and officially announced my departure from the rule of the Stormwind Kingdom. Now the only path I can take is to overthrow the rotten noble council together with Edwin Van Cleve and rebuild a new country. And I will become the king of this country." Carlton laughed wildly and raised his hands as if to embrace the glorious future. Looking at the strong desire in his brother's eyes, Duke Elro Ebelok painfully closed his eyes and did not continue to persuade him. Because he knew better than anyone that no matter what he said, he could not stop Carlton's ambition. Unless he suffered a decisive defeat, it was impossible for him to wake up. However, Carlton obviously did not think he made the wrong choice. He stood up and pulled out his sword and placed it on his brother's neck. He lowered his voice and asked, "Do you have any last words? Can you tell me what you plan to do with Althea?" Duke Elro Ebelok struggled to raise his head again. "Don't worry, I won't kill her, let alone hurt her. When I defeat the rotten noble council of Stormwind City and become the new king, I will return to Night Town and let her continue to rule." Carlton promised with a serious expression. He did not have much resentment towards his brother and niece, so he did not plan to use extreme methods to eliminate them, even if they would hate him for the rest of their lives. Is that so? In that case, I'm relieved. Although I know you will be unhappy, I still have to say that your plan with Edwin Van Cleve will not succeed. The power of Stormwind City's noble council is far beyond your imagination. Even if it looks so weak, it can easily quell an internal conflict. All right, let's do it. I'm ready to see Father. No, we will succeed. When you see Father, remember to send my regards. Also, tell him that the Ebelok family will be led to glory under my leadership. Chapter 360. Humans are really short-sighted and stupid creatures. But as a high elf, I don't seem to have the right to criticize them. After all, Silverymoon's situation is not as good as Stormwind Kingdom's. Varna Morgenstern looked out the window at the bleak streets of the town and the terrified residents, pursing her lips into a sarcastic smile. It was unknown whether she was mocking Carlton, who dared to challenge the rule of Stormwind City, or her brethren who used dark energy to relieve their magical addiction. It was important to note that the self-proclaimed Blood Elves' bodies had undergone irreversible changes due to the large amount of magical energy they had absorbed. For example, the color of their pupils and skin, as well as their more and more extreme personalities. This was also why some High Elves would rather accept the title of traitor than pledge loyalty to Prince Kael'thas. As a person who loved to enjoy life, and enjoy the extreme joy of drinking the water of the Sunwell, Varna Morgenstern did not like the current state of her brethren at all. That was why she chose to return to Dalaran and continue living as a High Elf mage. But what she did not expect was that she, who had always hated political battles, would once again be involved in inexplicable trouble. Just as the female elf was considering whether to leave the Twilight Forest, Zenobia suddenly pushed open the door and walked in. The young girl who had just witnessed a series of killings was now slightly pale. She immediately closed the door after entering the room and bowed deeply with one hand on her chest. "Thank you very much for not stopping my father's plan, my lady." "No, you don't have to thank me, apprentice. The reason I didn't interfere is because I'm an elf. Whatever happens in your human kingdom has nothing to do with me. Do you understand?" Varna Morgenstern explained without turning her head. "Understood. Also, I just got a piece of news from the dead tax officer. The missing master seems to have appeared in Stormwind City not long ago." After confirming Varna's attitude, Zenobia quickly changed the topic. After all, the reason why the female elf stayed in the night town was to look for Zhang Cheng, who had gone missing in Raven Ridge. Now that there was news that he had returned safely to Stormwind City, there was naturally no need for her to stay in this eerie place. No matter what, Dalaran was now a member of the Alliance, and the Defias Brotherhood and Carlton, who had started the rebellion, were enemies of the Alliance. "Oh, really?" Varnachinga's eyes glowed as she licked her lips subconsciously. She would never forget that passionate night and the joy of tasting the water of the Well of Eternity again. Zenobia nodded lightly. "Yes, it said that the owner lives in the Golden Rose Inn. It's not hard to find him." "Very good. Looks like I don't have to stay here and continue to get moldy. Also, do you want to come with me? I believe that with your intelligence, you should know that this kind of rebellion will soon be suppressed, right?" Varna Morgenstern asked meaningfully. "Yes, ma'am, I know. But I'm sorry, I have to stay. He's my father, and I have to make sure he survives if he fails." Zenobia revealed a smile that was uglier than crying. "What a pitiful little fellow. I wish you good luck." As the last word fell, the female elf took out a teleportation rune and began to chant the incantation loudly. Not long after, under the powerful magic power, she disappeared without a trace. Feeling the residual energy in the air, Zenobia took a deep breath and turned in the direction of the town hall. She had to hurry and pacify the only military force in the Twilight Forest, the Night Watchers. Otherwise, she could not guarantee the safety of Nighttown. But she did not notice that less than a minute after she left, the air in the room suddenly became distorted. In the blink of an eye, a short female dwarf appeared by the bed. "Well, I think I found the source of the timeline disorder. Before things become irreparable, I have to talk to this damned intruder. I hope he's someone who likes to talk and avoids violence." The little dwarf muttered to herself as she jumped out of the window. Then she soared into the air and directly turned into a terrifying dragon. She had golden scales that shone like gold, strong wings, a thick tail, sharp claws, and deadly horns. There was no doubt that this was a typical adult bronze dragon. And because of the distortion of time, no one in the town had discovered her existence. Far away in Stormwind City, Zhangqing obviously did not know that he had been targeted by a bronze dragon. He was holding Countess Katrana Prester, who was wearing a low-cut black dress, and walked into the ball under countless envious, jealous, and hostile gazes. He now wanted to know how many people would envy him if every guest present knew that this beautiful and charming woman's true identity was a black dragon. They would probably all run away in an instant. Soft candlelight, delicious food, handsome and beautiful male and female servants, despite all kinds of threats in the surrounding areas, and the farmers' lives were getting harder and harder. The upper nobles still maintained their decent lives. They had plenty of enjoyment and entertainment. Onyxia looked around with a slightly cold gaze and said with a slightly disdainful tone, "Do you see that? These are the rulers of the Stormwind Kingdom. How decadent and how depraved they are. It won't be long before they all submit to me and give everything to the Black Dragon Legion." Zhang Cheng bent down and pretended to be intimate as he whispered in her ear, "It's their honor to serve such a powerful and beautiful lady like you." "Hee hee, you're good with words, young human. I now understand why Victor, Nefarian's human name, is willing to ally with you." Onyxia gently lifted Zhang Cheng's chin with her fingertips. Perhaps in the eyes of outsiders, this was a woman teasing a man, but Zhang Cheng knew very well that if she used a little force, his head would fly off from his neck. No one could resist the unparalleled power of an adult dragon, not even Grom Hellscream, who had personally killed the Lord of the Abyss, Magtheridon. Just as the two were in a slightly ambiguous position for less than 10 seconds, Bolvar for Dragon suddenly walked out of the crowd and asked with a frown, "Katrana, who is this young man?" "Ah, Bolvar, this is the childhood playmate I've mentioned to you not long ago. Don't be fooled by his young age. He's already a powerful spellcaster," Onyxia introduced in a rather excited voice. As a master of intrigue, she had noticed Bolvar for Dragon from the moment she entered the room, and had made all sorts of intimate gestures in order to provoke the jealousy of Bolvar for Dragon. Chapter 361. A powerful spellcaster? Bolvar for Dragon looked at his rival in love from head to toe. His eyes were filled with undisguised provocation. In his eyes, Brindle was at most a pretty boy who relied on his looks and glib tongue to please women. He was not comparable to the most powerful paladin in the Stormwind Kingdom. Seeing this, Zhang Cheng could not help but smile playfully. He replied politely, "I'm sorry, Your Excellency. I forgot that you're a paladin and are not very sensitive to magic energy. That's why you can't detect the arcane runes hidden in the surroundings. Perhaps I should make them appear so that you can feel how powerful the arcane power is." As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and snapped his fingers. Asterisk snap. Asterisk instantly. Asterisk with his body as the center, countless mysterious runes formed by arcane energy appeared in the cylindrical space within a 1-meter radius. These runes were so dense that they kept flashing with a beautiful violet light. Even people who did not know anything about magic could vaguely feel the huge power contained within. As for the members of the Royal Mage Guild, they had already opened their eyes wide and were concentrating on the runes that they had never seen before. After all, the High Elves had taught humans magic for thousands of years. Countless mages had almost completely grasped the arcane rune system. It was difficult to find any new research direction. But today, a young man who was supposed to be struggling in his apprenticeship stage suddenly showed a set of strange runes that were very different from the original arcane runes. How could they not be excited? Especially when he used the arcane energy to construct runes to form a large range of protection and trigger spells. It was like a bolt from the blue, and it gave them new inspiration and research direction. Even though Bolvar for Dragon did not know much about magic, his sharp intuition told him that these runes were full of danger. He subconsciously took a step back, but soon, driven by his pride, or his subconscious desire to embarrass himself in front of the woman he loved, he took a step forward and released the surging power of holy light in his body. Asterisk buzz. Asterisk when the two completely different energies collided, a strange sound began to reverberate in the air. In the blink of an eye, ripples of energy quickly spread to the surroundings. A few guests who were closer felt as if there was an invisible hand pushing them, and they couldn't help but retreat. When Zhang Cheng stepped in the ruined defense circle, he suddenly smiled. He raised his right hand and gently touched one of the runes. In the next second, boom, the arcane runes that had been still suddenly started to spin at high speed. At the same time, they expanded rapidly. The intense energy released not only flipped over a large number of tables and chairs, but also pushed Prince Regent more than 10 meters away. Because he used too much strength in his feet, he even crushed the hard marble floor and plowed out 2 6 to 7 centimeters deep trenches. Right now, everyone could clearly see an absolute energy defensive circle formed with the spellcaster at the center. From front to back, from left to right, from the sky to the ground, there was not a single gap. The shining arcane runes were like the most loyal guardians, protecting the safety of the spellcaster. Without a doubt, this was one of the precious knowledge that Zhang Cheng had learned in the dream. It was also the result of 25,000 years of Arita's wisdom. It was a special spellcasting method called burrito. In simple terms, it was to use arcane energy to construct special arcane runes around one's body and then hide them. If one encountered an enemy, they would use various combinations to form offensive or defensive spells. The advantage of this method was that it could save the necessary incantations and movements for normal spellcasting, but the disadvantage was that it would take a lot of time and energy to reconstruct the whole system. Before the fall of Arita, there were less than 100 spellcasters who could use this method, and Marasa was one of them. To some extent, the arcane civilization created by the Arita was far more developed and advanced than that of the High Elves. Of course, with Zhang Cheng's current strength, it was not enough to unleash the full power of this unique spellcasting system. He might not even be able to withstand the full blow of the Prince Regent. Unfortunately, Bolvar for Dragon did not bring any weapons or armor today. Plus, this was not a gladiator arena, but a ball for the nobles to socialize. After a short moment of absent-mindedness, he quickly calmed down the anger in his heart. He stood up and praised, "Not bad. You're a good opponent. But remember, there's no such thing as giving up in my dictionary. Thank you for the compliment. Also, I sincerely suggest that you change into a new pair of shoes first." Zhang Cheng glanced at the leather boots that exposed the toes of the Prince Regent and reminded him. "Shoes? Oh, damn it. I forgot that I'm not wearing armor today." Bolvar for Dragon complained in annoyance and quickly disappeared from the banquet hall. Looking at the back of the Prince Regent, Zhang Cheng immediately lowered his voice and said to the Countess beside him, "It seems that your plan to make the Duke jealous didn't succeed. To be more precise, you probably chose the wrong person." "Chose the wrong person? What do you mean?" The Princess of the Black Dragon frowned subconsciously. The reason was simple. Things did not turn out as she expected, where the two men were jealous of her, and it would be best if they could fight. But the reality was that after a confrontation, Bolvar for Dragon quickly controlled his emotions. Not only did he not show any jealousy, but he also inexplicably admired his rival in love. It's very simple. There are always a few people in this world who could be called heroes. They have a will stronger than steel and a soul purer than diamonds. They may be affected by negative emotions, but they will never indulge in them. Bolvar for Dragon is one of them. Please believe me, the moment he knows your true identity, no matter how madly he loved you, he will not hesitate to raise his sword in his hand. After saying this, Zhang Cheng took the Princess of the Black Dragon's hand and took her to the dance floor. They danced to the pleasant music. In fact, it was not too surprising that the Prince Regent did not fall into Onyxia's elaborate trap. After all, this was an important role for the future Lich King. He was a powerful mortal who had endured the terrifying magical plague of the Forsaken and was burned by the Red Dragon Queen's deadly breath. In the end, he stubbornly resisted Arthas's spiritual invasion in a half-dead state. Oomph. If Bolivar doesn't know what's good for him, then I don't mind destroying him. Chapter 362. When it was close to midnight, the lively ball finally dispersed. Zhang Cheng politely rejected the countless invitations from the noble women and noble ladies, as well as the almost crazy questions from the members of the Royal Mage Guild. He took the wooden box full of dragon eggs from a dragonborn disguised as a royal guard and walked alone along the moat to the trade zone. It had to be said that after the previous contest with the regent, he had completely entered the sights of the upper class of Stormwind City. After all, whether it was the close relationship with Countess Katrana Prester or the strange and powerful arcane runes, they all proved his value. The only thing to worry about now was if the identity of the Black Dragon Princess was exposed, would the leader of MI7, Matthias Shore, stand up for him and prove that he was an ally who infiltrated the enemy to obtain valuable information? However, he believed that with the intelligence of the other party, he would not let a spellcaster like him become the enemy of the Stormwind Kingdom. Looking up at the sky, full of stars, Zhang Cheng could not help but smile and mutter to himself, "This world is really becoming more and more interesting. Is this the reason for messing up the timeline? Because it's interesting?" Accompanied by a crisp and pleasant voice, a female dwarf walked out from the corner. Even though the other party's short stature and ridiculously large head looked a little cute and adorable, Zhang Cheng's expression instantly turned serious. This was because he had already recognized that this person was not a dwarf at all, but the bronze dragon who interacted with the players the most in the game, Chromie. For a moment, countless hidden runes were instantly activated, and the dazzling arcane brilliance could be seen clearly even from hundreds of miles away. Control of time. What a powerful force. Although he did not think that the bronze dragon could really be like the legends, who could freely travel through time or control the flow of time, at best, it could only distort time to a certain extent within a certain range. Even so, it was not something that mortals could deal with at all. He even had the demonic book of command and the parchment scroll in his hand. As long as the gnome in front of him made the slightest move to attack, he would not hesitate to summon all of his demons and activate the power of the scroll to leave Azeroth. Seeing Zhang Cheng's expression as if he was facing a great enemy, Chromie quickly realized something. He stared with his two big eyes and exclaimed in disbelief, "You know me?" "No. Strictly speaking, this should be the first time we've met, Bronze Dragon," Zhang Cheng replied calmly. "Since you've never seen me before, how do you know that I'm a Bronze Dragon? I've never revealed my true form in front of mortals." Chromie frowned and continued to ask. She could feel that the young human in front of her seemed to be very familiar with her. Otherwise, why would he show such strong vigilance and hostility on their first encounter? "I'm sorry, but I'm not obligated to answer your questions. Please state your intentions, Bronze Dragon." Zhang Cheng purposely did not mention Chromie or Chronom. Otherwise, he could not guarantee that the little gnome would not suddenly transform and force him to explain what was going on. In addition, the Black Dragon Princess Onyxia, hidden in Stormwind Keep, was also a big hidden danger. Once she discovered the appearance of a bronze dragon, it was hard to guarantee that she would not jump out and transform into a two-dragon battle. At that time, the so-called fun would be really big. Never underestimate the Black Dragon's ability to attract hatred. When the wings of death rebelled, it caused an unimaginable disaster to the other 4 Dragon Guardian legions. The blue dragons were almost wiped out. Fortunately, Chromie was not looking for trouble today. She only hesitated for a moment, then quickly took 2 steps forward with her 2 short legs. She waved her hands and released a silver, translucent fog. After about a second or two, the fog gradually became clear, followed by the scene of the night town. Conspiracy, betrayal, slaughter, brothers killing each other. The coup that happened not long ago in the Twilight Forest was shown exactly as it was. Especially when he saw Duke Elroy Everlock's head being cut off, Zhang Cheng suddenly felt like he was in a mess. Because he finally realized that although he had tried his best to change the course of history in this world, the butterfly wings would inevitably appear. "Do you see?" Because of your intervention, the accumulated resentment and dissatisfaction in Carlton's heart exploded. He killed his brother, who should have continued to rule the night town, and at the same time joined forces with the Brotherhood to announce their separation from the Stormwind Kingdom. Of course, such a degree of time change is not enough to attract my attention. What really interests me is you, an intruder from another world. As she spoke, Chromie looked up with a curious expression. As an adult bronze dragon who could travel through time and hide herself, there were very few things in Azeroth that could arouse her curiosity. Oh, what made you think that I'm an intruder from another world? After confirming that the other party was not looking for trouble, Zhangcheng quickly calmed down. Although he had not yet put away the activated protective runes, he gave up the idea of summoning demons from the Book of Control. In any case, the Bronze Dragons were a group of dragon aspects that were not very keen on fighting. Rather than using violence, they seemed to prefer to resolve conflicts through negotiation, unless they encountered the eternal dragons who were trying to destroy the timeline. It's very simple. I can hardly feel the flow of time on you. This means that you're not integrated into the timeline, and you won't even age and die. If my guess is correct, even if I go back to the past or the future now, I won't find any traces of your existence. As Chromie explained, her eyes lit up as if she had found an incredible treasure. What do you mean? I'm not integrated into the timeline. I won't age and die. Also, what do you mean by the last sentence? No matter if you go back to the past or the future, you won't find any traces of my existence. Zhang Cheng frowned and asked. He suddenly felt that the bronze dragon in front of him, who had transformed into a little dwarf, should be able to solve some of the doubts that had troubled him for a long time. As for the changes that happened in the night town, he didn't care. He believed that with the military strength of MI7 and the Stormwind Kingdom, this level of rebellion could be easily suppressed, and when the suppression was completed, the timeline would soon return to normal. Chapter 363. How do I explain this? Strictly speaking, your body did not actually enter Azeroth. Instead, there was an extremely powerful force that forcefully tore space and time apart and stuffed them into this world. To give an example that is easy to understand, the world is like a huge flat painting, and you, the person in the painting, are cut out of one painting and placed in another. So for you, only the cut-out part is coherent and has a continuation of time. Chromie waved her short but powerful arms and explained excitedly. She really wanted to find out what kind of force could so perfectly sever time and space. Could it be the Titans of the Pantheon who had once transformed this planet? I see. In other words, everything I experienced in this world does not exist in the theoretical timeline. Zhang Cheng's face showed an expression of sudden realization. As a person who liked to think, he had always thought that the weeks and months he spent in other worlds were only a few minutes and a few days on Earth. This was because the flow of time between worlds was different. But now it seemed that it was not a problem with the flow of time at all. Instead, when the cutout time flowed out, the time around his body had already been frozen. It was no wonder that every time he squeezed through a huge crack in space, there would always be a strong sense of estrangement. It was not a feeling at all. It was really not integrated. Chromie nodded seriously. That's right. In fact, time is not a coherent line like many people think. On the contrary, it is made up of countless relatively independent stages. The important events that connect each stage are called time nodes. Once these nodes are destroyed, it means that the future will change. The duty of bronze dragons is to guard one important time node after another and prevent them from being destroyed. However, your actions have not yet affected the time nodes, so as long as you promise to solve these problems, I will not pursue your responsibility. Solve? How? Hearing that she did not intend to pursue the butterfly effect that he had caused, Zhang Cheng could not help but secretly sigh in relief. He then asked with great interest. No matter what, bronze dragons were the most mysterious of the dragon aspects. At the same time, they were also the ones that appeared the least in front of mortals. Even the famous son of the Black Dragon King, Nefarian, had only killed a young bronze dragon. Hence, he was very curious about how much the bronze dragon could distort time. Whatever means you use, make Carton perform the duties that his brother should have performed. Well, Let's call it day. I don't want to get into a fight with Onyxia if she finds out. Remember, intruder, don't mess with time again. I'll be watching you." After saying this, Chromie suddenly disappeared without any warning, as if he had never appeared. Less than a second after she left, everything around her that was originally still suddenly came to life. Whether it was the sound of flowing water from the moat or the hooting of the owls at night, all of them once again echoed in the sky above midnight Storm City. There is no doubt that this powerful bronze dragon had caused the time in this area to temporarily slow down or stop. After staring at the place where the little dwarf had disappeared for a full 5 minutes, Zhang Cheng pursed his lips and sighed, "Control of time. What a cheat-like ability. Unfortunately, there are too many flaws." However, through this encounter, he realized that the bronze dragon's control over time wasn't as powerful as it appeared in the game. At the very least, it was useless against an outsider like him who was surrounded by the remnants of time and space from another world. It was clear that the power of time that the Titans had bestowed was not actually real time. It was a disguised management authority that had certain limitations. For example, even the Bronze Dragon King, Nozdormu, was unable to travel back in time to the time before the Titans had transformed Azeroth. He was also unable to change the various rules set by the Pantheon. To put it simply, the so-called dragon aspects were at best a watchdog raised by the Titans. Perhaps the Black Dragon King, Nefarian, had noticed this, so he took the initiative to enter the embrace of the ancient gods, eager to destroy the entire world. Zhang Cheng didn't like the Pantheon Titans who were noble, supreme, and godlike in the game setting at all. To be precise, in his eyes, these high-level life forms were just a group of bastards who relied on their own strength to do whatever they wanted. They forcefully transferred their will to the universe where Azeroth was located. Those who obeyed them were righteous, and those who disobeyed them were evil. They needed to be completely wiped out from the body to the soul. Those who could not be wiped out were imprisoned in a prison. It was the logic of a bandit. Of course, whether it was the dragon aspects or the Titans that had awakened from the planet, they were far from what he could deal with. As a mortal, Zhang Cheng was very clear about the power he held. He neither overestimated nor belittled it. Just as he was thinking about how to solve the problem in Night Town, the originally calm parchment suddenly flashed with a golden light, followed by a terrifying spatial rift that appeared out of thin air. Before he could react to what had happened, his whole body was sucked into the endless darkness. Out of his subconscious reaction, he took advantage of the fact that the rift had not closed and summoned all the demons from the demonic tome of control. He allowed them to be torn to pieces by the terrifying spatial rift, and their souls returned to the demonic tome. When his vision returned to normal, he was surprised to find that he had returned to the basement of the villa in Brooklyn, New York. At the same time, a line of small words appeared on the parchment. "Trial. Seize the fragment world. If you succeed, you will open the door to the first floor of the Tower of Time. If you fail, you will seize all power and await death." Trial? It's finally here. Zhang Cheng narrowed his eyes and muttered to himself. That's right. The real trial is here. Don't take any chances. You can only succeed and not fail. Please believe me, you don't want to know how miserable the consequences of failure are. The demon sword, Soul Catcher, who had not spoken for a long time, reminded him. Don't worry, I have prepared enough trump cards. Tell me, if I pass the trial, what will happen next? As Zhang Cheng sorted out his gains, he raised his head and glanced at the electronic clock with the date on the wall. Unsurprisingly, only about 10 minutes had passed. Even the tea in the pot was still warm. Chapter 364. The weather in New York at the end of September was cool and dry. During the day, the temperature would not exceed 24 degrees Celsius, and, at night, it would drop to 8 degrees Celsius above zero. Although many young beauties still wore various sexy low-cut shirts, t-shirts, miniskirts, and hot pants for the sake of beauty, more ordinary people had already changed into long-sleeved clothes early, preparing to welcome the arrival of winter. However, as the cars slowly drove into Greenwood Cemetery, the atmosphere suddenly became solemn. Men, women, old people, and children all wore almost uniform black suits. As the resting place of countless elites in the political, business, and artistic fields, this place not only had beautiful scenery, but also had a long history. In a report that once appeared in the New York Times, the life ideal of New York residents was to live on Fifth Avenue, live in Central Park, and sleep with their father in Greenwood. But perhaps no one would have thought that the original reason for the establishment of Greenwood Cemetery was to protect the powerful lords and counselors who had died, to prevent their bodies from being awakened and used by evil demon worshippers or necromancers. Later, some businessmen and politicians who served the underground world gradually learned that this cemetery was protected by powerful supernatural forces, so they chose to use this place as a cemetery for themselves and their descendants. Feeling the mysterious energy in the surrounding air, Zhang Cheng raised his hand to signal the Pullman to stop the car. He then pushed open the door and joined the long line. As today was the day of Counselor Miles's funeral, many residents of New York's underground world came. On the one hand, they wanted to witness the burial of this powerful figure with their own eyes. On the other hand, they wanted to inquire about the fragment world, because it was said that the special envoy from Europe would also appear at the funeral today. Melancholy. Silence. Silence. The residents of the underground world who had long been accustomed to death were completely different from the other ordinary people in the cemetery. They neither talked nor showed the slightest sadness. They just walked along the path to the designated hall. Zhang Cheng noticed that this hall had no cross, no priest, and no traces of any religion. There was only a coffin made of natural crystal. Miles's old body lay quietly inside, without any trace of decay. Francis held the corner of the coffin and stared at the face of the owner of the coffin, as if he was trying to imprint the face into his memory. However, when he noticed an acquaintance approaching, he immediately raised his head and forced a smile. He placed one hand on his chest and bowed. "Welcome to the counselor's funeral, Mr. Zhang. Of course. After all, before His Excellency Miles left this world, he left me a very rich inheritance, didn't he?" As Zhang Cheng spoke, he turned around and glanced at Patty, who was imprisoned in the artificial body. The demoness didn't hide the hatred in her heart. If it wasn't for the fact that she couldn't disobey her master's orders, she would have definitely rushed up to smash the coffin and tear the corpse inside into pieces. No words could describe the intense humiliation she felt at this moment. She might be the last work of the councilman before he passed away. Oh, right, about the statue in the ICU. I have personally sent it to the basement of the old house. Francis took a deep breath and sighed. Thank you. Hearing that the important magic item Miles used in the battle had become an intermediate item, Zhang Cheng's eyes instantly burst with excitement and anticipation. According to his deduction, it was not an ordinary statue, but a special armor that contained the power of earth, water, air, and fire, the four basic elements of the world in ancient Greek mythology. When the alchemy of this world was activated, this thing would transform into various forms according to the needs of the user, either to protect oneself or to attack the enemy. It was an out-and-out magic item that integrated both attack and defense. Just when Francis was about to say something, a middle-aged man wearing an old-fashioned 50s suit and a black top hat suddenly walked over and interrupted. "Good morning, gentlemen. I'm sorry to disturb you, but I would like to ask, you're Mr. Zhang who applied to the New York City Council to obtain a territory to become a lord, right?" "Yes, it's me. May I ask who you are?" Zhang Cheng raised his head and stared at the man with slight confusion. "Lauren Corney. You could just call me Lauren." After a vote, the remaining 3 members of the New York City Council unanimously agreed that you were fully qualified. Here, this is the badge that symbolizes your status as the Lord, and the 6 knight rings used to confer titles. As for the territory, it is close to the jurisdiction of the Desire Witch, Catherine. The man who called himself Lauren Corney did not waste any time. After clearly expressing his intention, he directly stuffed a silver metal badge with a capital letter F and 6 capital letters K into Zhang Cheng's hand and turned to leave. Looking at the man's back that was gradually disappearing, Zhang Cheng turned his head and asked the old man beside him, "Lauren Corney? How come I've never heard of this name? Who is he?" "The Shadow King, Lauren. He is the most trusted assistant of Senator Lafern and also an extremely terrifying assassin. Please be vigilant, sir. What you are about to face is not as simple as an ordinary power struggle. Francis lowered his voice and reminded him. The Shadow King? I hope he is worthy of this title. After saying that, Zhang Cheng threw the badge into his pocket and walked in the direction of his old acquaintance Cain. The latter seemed to have noticed something and immediately stopped whispering to the people beside him. He smiled and opened his arms to give him a warm hug. I am very happy to see you in this sad moment, my young friend. If I'm not wrong, you have already gotten your own Lord's badge, right? Yes. Just now, Lauren Corney gave this to me. Zhang Cheng took out the badge that symbolized his status as the Lord and shook it lightly. To be honest, he had long been used to being alone, so he really wasn't interested in managing a territory. What really interested him was that after becoming a Lord, he could openly obtain a lot of important information about this world, and he could also participate in the underground world auction held at the end of every year. That's right. You can't participate just because you have money. Only lords and counselors can participate. The feudal system of the Dark Middle Ages that imprisoned Europe for thousands of years was still completely intact in the underground world. Although many of the residents of the underground world had slowly integrated into modern society, for the ruling class, the original rules and regulations set by the council were the most perfect. At the same time, they also had enough power to maintain their rule. As for the revolution that happened in the world of ordinary people, it was impossible for it to happen in the underground world that had supernatural powers. Chapter 365. Congratulations, from today onwards, you are one of us. Although in my eyes, you have long been a true competitor and potential ally. Cain stroked the neatly trimmed beard on his chin and complimented. He did not find it strange that the young magus in front of him could become a lord. After all, the number of alchemists was so small that even a fledgling acolyte would receive some special treatment, not to mention a master who could provide large quantities of different types of magic potions. In the underground world, age was never an obstacle to one's path to power. On the contrary, young people with great potential often meant that they had extraordinary talent and intelligence. Not only would they not be suppressed, but they would also receive more resources. Especially those ancient families with hundreds or even thousands of years of history, they would often take in new blood through marriage every once in a while to ensure that they were always at the top of the food chain, or even at the top. Without a doubt, Zhang Cheng was now standing under the spotlight and being the focus of attention of various forces. Perhaps outsiders did not understand why the complicated procedures and layers of tests to become a lord would give out results so quickly. But Cain, who had many informants, knew that there were definitely people who boasted of their ancient status and noble bloodline behind this. That was because he had once been one of them when he was young. If it weren't for the plotting of the Desire Witch, Catherine, he would probably have married a woman with a prominent background and given birth to a bunch of talented descendants. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. The only thing he could do now was to take revenge and use his remaining life and strength to let his enemies taste the taste of pain and death. Staring at the deep eyes of the old man in front of him, Zhang Cheng suddenly laughed without warning. As he laughed, he teased, "Should I feel honored?" "No, the one who should feel honored is me," Cain replied with a pun. In his complicated revenge plan, the other party was the most important part. Is that so? Then I will look forward to your next performance. By the way, regarding the matter you asked me to do when we first met, I have already settled it. Here, this is the sample. I will send the price and the required materials to you shortly. After saying that, Zhang Cheng took out a small bottle of crystal clear sand that did not contain any impurities. "Oh, you succeeded so quickly?" Cain's face showed undisguised surprise. He hurriedly took the bottle and poured a little into his palm. In an instant, an indescribable feeling welled up in his heart. He carefully injected a portion of his energy into the medium through his skin. Soon, these 5-colored transparent particles floated up, forming strange supernatural phenomena such as flames, ice, flowing water, stones, and small tornadoes. After a full 30 seconds, these abnormal phenomena slowly subsided. Cain, on the other hand, froze on the spot for about 2 to 3 minutes, as if he was possessed. Then, he exclaimed in disbelief, "So pure?" He didn't feel any obstruction at all. "You actually improved its manufacturing process." Improvement? No. Dear Lord Kane, I have recreated a new medium. Please remember that from today onwards, I'm the only alchemist in the entire New York area. At the same time, I'm also an unquestionable authority. After saying this meaningful sentence, Zhang Cheng left without looking back. He didn't even know what these lords were discussing. He didn't even have the interest to ask for their names. Ever since the parchment gave him the content of the trial, he immediately understood one thing. His relationship with all the lords of Brooklyn was hostile. It was impossible for them to form allies. In fact, after returning from the world of Azeroth, he had been secretly planning a massacre. He wanted to kill everyone who entered the fragment world, regardless of whether they were humans, angels, demons, or any other special species. This was to ensure that his trump card would not be exposed. My lord, congratulations. The Pullman, who didn't understand how many schemes were hidden behind the whole thing, bowed. His eyes revealed unconcealable excitement, and even changed the way he addressed Link. Just as Zhang Cheng was about to say something, there was a sudden commotion in the hall. 3 men and a woman, surrounded by more than a dozen followers, slowly walked in from the main door. Wherever they passed, the crowd on both sides would automatically make way for them. The Pullman clearly knew that the people he was loyal to didn't know much about the important figures of New York's underworld. He quickly lowered his voice and introduced, "The old man in the blue suit is Quentin. He is the ruler of Manhattan. The pale-faced one is Brenda. It is said that he is a quarter vampire and is the ruler of the Bronx. The lady in the black tight dress and the rose hat is Venus. She is the ruler of the wealthiest queens. As for the guy at the back, he should be the special envoy from Europe." "I see. Right, what about Staten Island? I remember that the New York Parliament seems to have 5 districts." Zhang Cheng looked at these important figures of the underworld and asked without turning his head, "Sorry, my lord. Senator Adeli to Staten Island is very mysterious. He probably stopped asking about anything more than 10 years ago. Some people think he is missing, and some think he is dead. However, the Parliament seems to know the inside story and never announced his death." The Pullman's tone was full of uncertainty. Even he didn't know the exact situation of the senator. However, considering that he was only a lowly cleaner, it was not easy for him to know so much. Zhang Cheng didn't make things difficult for his subordinates and didn't continue to ask. He sat on the bench and waited to see what important news the other party had to announce. Unfortunately, before these guys could walk to the podium, the Witch of Desire, Catherine, silently came to his side. She put her black lace-gloved right hand into the inner pocket of his suit and stuffed a note inside. She then whispered in his ear, "Dear Zhang, how is it? My previous prediction was correct, right? Be careful. The people in the Parliament don't have good intentions. Only by allying with me can you make the right choice. Don't worry, my lady. Let us first listen to the announcement of the senator and the special envoy. Don't forget, you have done a lot of little things against me in private." Zhang Cheng responded without batting an eyelid. He then took out the note from his pocket and glanced at it. He raised the corner of his mouth and revealed a playful expression. Chapter 366. An abandoned castle on the outskirts of the capital of Albania. "So, you know the situation inside?" After Zhang Cheng read the contents of the note, he immediately probed without batting an eyelid. It should be known that the fragment world was a brand new space formed by the collision, fragmentation, and mixing of 3 different worlds: heaven, hell, and earth. Therefore, according to the number of fragments absorbed from each world, it would present different features of the landscape. Some were close to hell, with red magma and volcanoes everywhere. Some were close to heaven, with incredible holy brilliance everywhere. Some were like earth, which had not been destroyed by modern civilization, with mountains, water, forests, lakes, and oceans. In short, the fragment world had no fixed size, let alone a constant shape. Each had its own unique ecosystem, and it could even reproduce brand new life forms and civilizations. Before a comprehensive investigation was completed, no one would know how big a fragment world was, whether it was like a villa, an island, or an entire continent. Generally speaking, whoever could obtain more information would have the upper hand in the process of seizing the fragment world. Catherine pursed her lips and stretched out a finger with a faint smile. She shook it gently. No, dear, before you become an ally, I won't tell you too much information. Also, don't get too close to Cain, or I'll be jealous. I believe you should know that once a woman's jealousy starts to make trouble, what terrible things can they do, right? Of course, madam. I assure you that the relationship with Overlord Cain is limited to normal transactions. Other than that, there won't be any further cooperation. After saying that, a red flame suddenly burst out of Zhang Cheng's palm and completely engulfed the note. In the blink of an eye, it turned into a pile of black dust and scattered with the wind. At the same time, the 3 men and 1 woman on the podium gathered together and whispered a few words. Soon, Senator Venus, who ruled Queens, took the initiative to take 2 steps forward and exchanged a look with Francis, who was guarding the coffin. Then he coughed hard. Cough. Silence. Ladies and gentlemen, residents from New York's underground world. Today, with a sad and heavy heart, we are here to bid farewell to Senator Miles from Brooklyn. We wish his soul can have eternal peace after death. It had to be said that this woman, who was wearing a black dress and a bright red rose hat, looked about 30 years old and had a powerful aura. She controlled the atmosphere of the funeral scene with just 1 sentence, especially her pair of gray pupils. Every time she swept across the hall, it would make people's brains tingle like needles, as if something had invaded their spiritual world. There was no doubt that this was a very rare and powerful ability. It was said that when she was fighting, she could often control the enemy with a look and then force the enemy to turn around and attack their comrades. During the whole process, the controlled would always remain conscious, watching their companions and relatives die one by one. That intense stimulation was even more painful than death. Therefore, her enemy had either committed suicide out of extreme guilt or had completely turned into a lunatic and was locked up in a prison set up by the council. Zhang Cheng, who was sitting on the bench, silently observed the targets that might pose a threat to him. He did not care about the monotonous and boring eulogy at all. After an unknown amount of time, maybe 10 minutes, maybe half an hour, after the 3 counselors had delivered a boring speech, Francis lifted the coffin of his master and put it into the prepared grave. Then, he used a powerful spell to seal the entrance, ending this nondescript funeral. But the interesting thing was that, although the funeral was over, none of the people present chose to leave. They still stood there and watched the special envoy from Europe. Needless to say, they were eager to get the location of the fragment world entrance and as much relevant information as possible. Counselor Brenda, who claimed to have a quarter of vampire blood, was the first to notice this. A sneer flashed in his eyes, and he stretched out his hands and announced loudly, "The North American Supreme Council has granted amnesty. This time, there will be some changes in the rules of this war game. Whoever can seize the ownership of the fragment world will be eligible to become a counselor of New York's secondary council, whether he is the Lord of Brooklyn or not." What? Damn it. How can this be? It's not fair. Isn't this a disguised way to encourage the lords of other regions to join in? For a while, many guys with the title of lord began to complain. Some of the more timid ones even had the idea of withdrawing. Hearing the chaos below the stage, Brenda immediately raised his fist and smashed the hardwood podium with a bang. He roared with a gloomy face, "Shut up. This is an order signed by Counselor Laffern of the North American Supreme Council." It was conveyed by his most trusted assistant, Lord of Shadows Lauren Corney. "Do any of you have any objections?" In an instant, the originally chaotic scene suddenly became quiet. Countless pairs of eyes were cast at the man standing in the corner as if he was about to merge with the shadows. Seeing that the unruly lords were frightened by the name of the Lord of Shadows, Brenda pursed his lips and showed a disdainful expression. Then he shook off the sawdust on his clothes and continued, "From now on, the lords of Brooklyn have a month to prepare. After a month, bring your army to the designated dock warehouse. Now I announce, Brooklyn has officially entered a state of war. Let's fight. People of the underground world, use blood and death to forge the path to power. As the last word fell, a pair of bright red bat wings suddenly appeared behind him, as if they were fished out of blood. Feeling the pungent smell of blood in the air, and the people around him gradually becoming more and more excited, Zhang Cheng turned around and walked out of the auditorium without looking back. As one of the few people with a clear head, he knew that from this moment on, the drama of countless conspiracies and power had finally begun. However, this time, he did not know the so-called plot, nor did he know what kind of plans and trump cards his opponents had. He could only rely on his real strength to kick away every obstacle that stood in his way. But before that, he needed to recruit a few knights and then take over his own territory. Pullman, how's the training of the new werewolf I gave you last time? Zhang Cheng suddenly asked without warning. You mean Clover? Well, I'm not sure about his current state. It's better for you to take a look yourself. Chapter 367. Darkness, dampness, coldness, hunger. Clover couldn't remember how long he had stayed in this dark basement, nor could he remember the last time he had eaten. In short, his entire body was now bound by heavy chains as thick as a bowl. He couldn't even remember his original human form. He could only twist his body with all his might, trying to break free from these annoying shackles. He would rush to the streets to kill one life after another, and then devour their flesh to satisfy his subconscious thirst for food. Just as he was about to lose his rationality and ability to think, completely turning into a ferocious beast, a dot of light suddenly appeared in the air, followed by a cloud of white smoke. The choking smell immediately made the werewolf's extremely sensitive nose uncomfortable, and he subconsciously shrank back. About 2 to 3 seconds later, an old man wearing a tattered black shirt and a lame leg came forward, cursing with a rather unfriendly attitude. Damn it, little wolf cub, how many times do I have to tell you? Don't succumb to your subconscious desires. Remember, first of all, you are a human with flesh and blood, feelings and thoughts. Next is the beastly nature of a wolf. I'm sorry, old man. I don't know why, but whenever I smell blood, I become abnormally excited. Following that, the desire to kill quickly surges into my brain. Clover's large wolf head drooped, a strong sense of shame in his eyes. So I forget it. It's already an amazing achievement for you to be able to freely switch between human and werewolf in such a short period of time. Let your master take care of the rest of the trouble. Now put on your clothes, I'm coming. Someone is coming to pick you up. After saying that, the old man took a deep puff of his cigarette and casually threw the clothes, pants, socks, and shoes in his arms on the ground. The appearance of the clothes seemed to have allowed Clover to smell the scent of the civilized world once more. The muscles all over his body began to twitch. In the blink of an eye, he turned from a monster covered in thick gray hair into a naked, handsome young man. After putting on his clothes as quickly as possible, he followed his teacher out of the dark underground prison and came to a small shop that specialized in selling all kinds of old-fashioned firearms and ammunition. He didn't know if it was because he had been underground for too long or because werewolves didn't like sunlight, but when a ray of sunlight shone into his eyes, he immediately felt very uncomfortable. The old man did not pay attention to the young man's reaction. He limped to the counter and shouted at the Pullman, "Hey, I brought him to you." For the record, he hasn't completely controlled his thirst for blood and slaughter, so it's best not to let him smell the thick scent of blood. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what will happen. Don't worry, old werewolf. I have many ways to ensure that even if he loses his mind, he will still obey orders. Before the lawyer could speak, Zhang Cheng took over the topic. You? Who are you? The old man frowned. Mind your manners. Old cripple. This is Mr. Zhang, the lord appointed by the Supreme Council of North America. The Pullman quickly stood up and explained. Although his tone was very strict, he was actually telling the other party that he couldn't afford to offend this young man. Oh, it turns out that you're a lord. The crippled old man raised his eyebrows in an exaggerated manner. There was no trace of respect at all. Instead, there was a hint of sarcasm. Zhang Cheng ignored the other party's sarcastic attitude and directly asked the young man who stood motionless, "Clover, are you ready to serve me?" "Yes, master. I can't wait to leave this damn place." Clover raised his hand to block the sunlight coming in from the window and gave an affirmative answer without thinking. No one wanted to stay in a dark basement all day, and no one wanted to be tied up in chains, even if the purpose was to control the manic beast in their heart. "Great. It just so happens that I have a gift for you. But it's a little dangerous, so the choice is in your hands. You can choose to accept this gift and gain power from it, or you can reject it and continue to be a pathetic chess piece." After that, Zhang Cheng took out a small bottle of potion that exuded a strong dark aura from his suit pants pocket. The werewolf called Old Cripple seemed to have felt something. His pupils suddenly contracted, and he asked with a serious face, "Are you crazy? You're letting a newborn werewolf consume such a terrifying thing." "I'm sorry, but I don't need you to care about my business." Zhang Cheng glanced at him with disdain and continued to look at the young man standing not far away. This potion was nothing but a powerful magic potion created with the help of the Book of Aragel's research notes and Wirgin's blood. If a normal person drank it, their blood vessels would instantly burst from the magic energy. But if a werewolf drank it, they would become stronger and fiercer than their own kind. In fact, through his research, he already knew that the so-called Wirgin's blood was actually a mutation caused by the night elves receiving the power of the demigod Wolf Goldrin. It wasn't a curse at all. These druids couldn't control the wild power in their blood, so their rationality was quickly devoured, and they became a group of monsters completely subservient to their instincts. Just like the druids of the Claw who had become beasts for too long, they had lost their sense of self. The only difference was that Aragel had used the knowledge recorded in the Book of to contaminate the blood of the demigod Wolf Goldrin with inferior shadow energy, resulting in the strange werewolf curse. Now, Zhang Cheng had once again extracted this pure and wild demigod's blood and injected it with the powerful shadow energy. Together with the evolving potion that he had successfully developed not long ago, it was enough to give the newborn werewolf unimaginably terrifying power. As for whether he would lose his rationality, there was no need to worry. As long as he wore the collar modified from Aragel's magic shackles, even if he really became a beast, he would obey orders like a domesticated dog. Clover took the potion with trembling hands, his heart full of struggle. After a full 5 minutes, he took a deep breath, pulled out the cork, and drank the black liquid. The next second, accompanied by a heart-wrenching howl, his body began to swell and grow silver-white hair. The unimaginable pain caused the young man to go berserk, and he directly pounced on the old cripple closest to him. After the old cripple was attacked, he immediately transformed into a black-haired werewolf and pounced on Clover to tear him apart. Chapter 368. Brat, wake up. Don't force me to kill you. The old cripple pushed the bloody maw away with all his might while trying to wake up the young man who wanted to kill him. Whoa. Unfortunately, Clover's eyes had turned completely blood red and he had lost all rationality. His mind was filled with thoughts of tearing apart the prey in front of him and relieving the immense pain he was enduring through blood and slaughter. Left with no other choice, the old cripple could only sigh in his heart. He opened his mouth and bit down viciously on the young man's neck. According to his estimation, even if this bite couldn't break the cervical vertebra, it could still tear apart the aorta and render the young man immobile. But the moment his teeth came into contact with the hair, he suddenly felt a cold and sinister energy surging into his body. Soon after, the wound that was clawed open began to rot rapidly, emitting an unpleasant stench. What was even more frightening was that this energy had severely damaged the nerve transmission system, rendering him unable to exert any strength. In the end, he couldn't even bite through the hair on his opponent's neck. Moreover, through the pupils unique to werewolves, the old cripple could clearly see that Clover's muscles were becoming more and more developed. His teeth and claws were even emitting a faint black glow as though something unclean was attached to them. Before he could react to what this meant, Clover suddenly tore off his right arm. The old man couldn't bear the excruciating pain any longer and let out a tragic cry. Before the young man's attention was diverted, Zhang Cheng immediately instructed without turning his head. "Pullman, go to the car and bring that silver collar over." "Understood." The sweaty lawyer didn't say anything else and immediately sprinted out of the shop with 100 meters of speed. He carried a metal collar as thick as an adult's waist from the back seat of the car and ran back. One must know that as the potion began to take effect, Clover had swelled from his normal werewolf size to more than 2 times. Especially the earthworm-like black blood vessels hidden under the silver fur. They simply gave one goosebumps all over. The old cripple couldn't resist at all in the face of his frenzied attacks. In the blink of an eye, he lost both his arms and would probably be torn apart in a few seconds. "Relax, Pullman. He doesn't pose any threat to us." Zhang Cheng comforted his subordinate whose legs were constantly trembling as he took over the rather heavy collar and directly put it on Clover, who had clearly lost his rationality. In an instant, the arcane runes engraved on the collar's surface flashed with a faint purple radiance. The next second, the young man whose body had almost completely transformed into a giant wolf suddenly stopped all his attacks. His 2 blood-red eyes, although they still revealed boundless madness, they maintained their eerie silence. That's right. This is the werewolf I want. A powerful, crazy, and completely obedient monster." After saying that, Zhang Cheng even reached out his hand and patted the big furry head. His attitude was as if he was talking to a large husky instead of a monster that could swallow an ordinary person in one bite. Whether or not Clover would come to her senses had never been his concern in the first place. Recovering his rationality was naturally a good thing, but it wouldn't make a difference if he could never recover. After all, he only wanted a breeding machine that could mass-produce cannon fodder. Any creature that was infected by Clover would fall into a state of extreme madness and no longer be restrained by reason. They would madly attack everything that moved around them, whether it was humans, animals, or undead. "Master, do you need me to call the cleaners to clean up the scene?" Hearing the sirens approaching from afar, the Pullman immediately asked cautiously. Zhang Cheng nodded without hesitation. "Of course. Also, call for a fully enclosed truck. I need to transport it to a safe place." "Understood. I'll take care of everything." The Pullman was clearly very clear about his position and gave a guarantee without hesitation. As a resident of the underground world with low combat strength, the only thing he could rely on was his rich experience in dealing with emergencies and various underhanded methods. "Not bad. I'm very satisfied with your work attitude. Also, you've always wanted this, right?" Zhang Cheng slowly took out a night badge from his pocket. Gulp. Staring at the badge with the English letter K, the Pullman subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. After a while, he excitedly replied, "Yes, Master. Although I know my current strength isn't worthy of it, I swear I'll do my best to make up for it in other ways." "Dear Pullman, you haven't realized what your greatest value is. Do you think I accepted you because of your near-zero combat strength? No, I'm interested in your brain. It's the wisdom you've honed while living in the crevice of 2 worlds. Please remember this, or I don't mind replacing you with a smarter person." As the last word fell, Zhang Cheng casually threw the badge over. Then he directly entered the black car and waved his hand, indicating the banshee imprisoned in the body to drive. Through the rearview mirror, Patty glared at him with eyes full of hatred. She lifted her high heels and fiercely stepped on the gas pedal. In fact, as an artificial life under the strict control of magic, without the master's permission, she couldn't even make a sound. Even when she was fiercely fighting with the opposite sex to the limit of physical pleasure, she was no exception. It had to be said that before Miles died, he was extremely cruel to this enemy who had harmed his family. If his life hadn't come to an end, he might have used all kinds of terrible torture methods to torture her. Watching the car quickly disappear at the end of the street, the Pullman took a deep breath and gently wore the badge on his chest. Then, he raised his head and said to the dying old werewolf, "I'm sorry, old cripple. I'm afraid you won't be able to continue your usual luck today. Kill me. Use the silver shotgun on the wall. Cough, cough, cough. Hurry up. I don't want to become a mindless beast. The heavily injured old werewolf spat out dazzling blood foam. His tone revealed a trace of urgency. He could feel that the dark energy that had invaded his body was invading his brain. It wouldn't be long before the reason he was so proud of collapsed. As you wish. The poleman took out a handkerchief and wrapped his right hand. He took down a rather old wooden shotgun and stuffed 2 bullets with special markings into it. He aimed at the old werewolf's chest and pulled the trigger. Bang! After a loud bang, the old werewolf trembled violently. His eyes quickly lost their luster. Without asking, it was obvious that his heart was pierced through by the silver bullet. He couldn't be more dead. After doing all this, the poleman took out a lighter and burned the handkerchief that was stained with fingerprints to ashes. Then, he calmly called his former colleagues to deal with the aftermath. Chapter 369. Sitting in the car and admiring the passing pedestrians and scenery outside the window, Zhang Chung suddenly asked without warning, "Patty, you used to be a lord of Brooklyn, right? Can you tell me what a lord needs to do on a daily basis? What do you rely on to earn gold dinars? What? Even the omnipotent you don't know?" The banshee sneered sarcastically as she drove. "Answer my question directly, madam, unless you want me to ask in another way." Zhang Chung completely ignored the banshee's provocative attitude and directly threatened her. As the owner of the control, as long as he was willing, he could even make the other party strip naked on the street, kneel down and lick his toes, and do all sorts of embarrassing actions. He could even order the other party to commit suicide without hesitation. He didn't need to be angry at such a thing that he didn't know if it was a person or some kind of magical item. Patty undoubtedly understood this very well, and immediately put away the sarcastic expression on her face and explained without turning her head, the so-called lord is actually a bit like a gang boss. Gang boss? Zhang Chung raised his eyebrows in surprise. Yes, you have to understand that the people who rule the underground world are all people with different kinds of supernatural powers. Some of them have strange personalities, some are rebellious, and some are filled with strong desires. Money, power, beautiful women, or handsome men. In short, there are no lack of desires that a normal human should have. What's more frightening is that they can use their power to easily escape the pursuit of the judicial system. Let me ask you, if it were you, what would you do to make them behave? Patty asked expressionlessly. Zhang Chung stroked his chin, and a thoughtful expression quickly appeared on his face. All right, I understand. As a lord, you have to show absolute and overwhelming power and let every citizen of the underground world in your jurisdiction know that breaking the rules is equivalent to death. Then what about taxes? Don't tell me it's based on the number of people. That's right. It's based on the number of people. Every citizen of the underground world living in your jurisdiction has to hand over 15% of their income on time every month, no matter if it's gold dinars or dollars. Some lords even control the criminal organizations in their jurisdiction and make them their source of endless profits. Of course, the premise is that the secret of the underground world must not be exposed, or else the cleaners will be dispatched and secretly clean up all the ordinary people involved. In short, you just need to find a good accountant to take care of everything. The long period of silence made Patty have a tendency to talk, and she talked endlessly about her experience of managing the territory. Although she hated the young man sitting in the back seat, she didn't know why she suddenly felt an inexplicable sense of dependence. That sounds interesting. Turn the car around. I've changed my mind. I'm not going home. I'm going to the territory the council has assigned to me. Zhang Cheng's lips curled into an interested smile. Believe me, you won't be disappointed. As far as I know, that's the most two's the most to. God, I think I saw an angel. The middle-aged truck driver with a big belly exclaimed. Angel? No, Paul, that's not an angel. It's a devil. A devil from hell that seduces mortals. Damn it, I really want to have sex with her, even if the price is to go to hell. Another middle-aged man in the front passenger seat took a bite of the hamburger in his hand and retorted. From the lustful eyes and the bulging crotch, It was not difficult to see that he was 100% sure that the hamburger was a woman's breast. F***CK. You dare to defile a pure angel. I'm going to kill you. The truck driver crazily grabbed his companion's neck. The latter, not to be outdone, threw away the half-eaten hamburger and also grabbed his companion's neck and roared, "Idiot! I told you that's a devil, not an angel. She's an angel. No, she's a devil." Accompanied by the intense quarrel and scuffle, the two quickly rolled out of the car onto the highway, neither of them willing to back down. They didn't realize that their overly excited emotions were actually affected by the powerful magic of the Banshee. After about 20 minutes, the car slowly drove into a relatively bustling area. There were all kinds of small shops on both sides of the road, including bars, nightclubs, strip clubs, and supermarkets that sold fast food, desserts, daily necessities, and toys. In any case, unlike most of Brooklyn, which was either a clean and tidy gathering place for the rich or a dirty and messy gathering place for the poor, this place was filled with a complex feeling that was difficult to describe with words. On the streets, there were not only homeless beggars in ragged clothes, but also street performers showing off their performance art. Not far away, there were even young men selling narcotics and patrolling policemen getting along harmoniously. Patty seemed to be very familiar with this place, and after a while, they stopped at the entrance of a fitness club called Mysterious Hills. We're here. Zhang Cheng glanced at the strong and hot men and hot women who were sweating to their hearts' content through the transparent glass window, and the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. He never dreamed that his stronghold would be a fitness club. According to the rules of the council, every territory had a business place that was used to cover up the truth. It could be a restaurant, a bar, a nightclub, an antique shop, or a pawn shop. Generally speaking, the ownership of these places was owned by New York Secondary Council. But when there was a lord, it would become the personal property of the lord until the lord died or was stripped of his title due to committing a grave mistake. Obviously, Zhang Cheng's secret stronghold was this crowded fitness club in front of him. Go to the second floor and find a woman named Fitz. She will guide you through the handover procedures. Also, I won't go in with you, unless you want to see blood on the first day of your appointment. The Banshee stroked her long blonde hair and hinted. If one observed carefully, one would notice that Patty's hand that was holding the steering wheel had been slightly trembling. She would only do this when she was nervous or excited. Do you have a grudge with the people here? Zhang Cheng asked uncertainly. No, not a grudge, it's hatred. You know, I once sucked Fitz's first boyfriend dry, so she would immediately attack whenever she saw me.